The $15 contract. The heat came off Route 41 in waves that made the asphalt shimmer like water that wasn't there. Ray Mitchell had been riding since dawn, and by the time he spotted the diner sign Dottie's hand-painted letters on weather-beaten wood, his throat was dust and his back was telling him stories about age he didn't want to hear. He wasn't planning to stop. None of them were. But Hector called it out over the engine noise, and when 6 motorcycles want coffee in 103-degree Texas June, you don't argue with want. You find a place that has air conditioning and you sit in it until your spine remembers what upright feels like. They rolled in loud. That's what 7 Harleys do. They don't arrive, they announce. The sound bounced off the diner's cinder block walls and the empty lot and the long flat nothing of scrub brush that stretched in every direction until it hit horizon. Ray was last to park, always was. He liked the 30 seconds between shutting down his engine and stepping into whatever came next, liked the way silence felt after hours of wind and road roar, liked watching his brothers walk ahead of him into new places while he took stock of where they'd just arrived. He pulled off his helmet, ran a hand through hair that was more gray than it used to be, sweat stuck to his skull, breathed. The air tasted like hot dirt and distant rain that wouldn't arrive for hours, maybe days. That's when he heard the footsteps, small, deliberate. The scuff of sneakers on gravel, the kind of sound a child makes when they're trying not to be heard but their shoes have other ideas. He turned his head slow. 30 years of walking into rooms where sudden movements got misread had taught him that much. She came around the corner of the diner like she'd been waiting there. Maybe she had been. 8 years old, maybe 8.5, if you were generous. Yellow t-shirt washed so many times the color had gone pale at the shoulders. Jeans with a torn knee that looked old, not fashionable. Sneakers that lit up when you stepped, one side blinking red, the other side dead. But none of that was what stopped him cold. It was her face. The right side of it was swollen in a way that made his jaw lock before his brain had fully processed the image. A bruise spread from just below her eye down across her cheekbone, deep purple bleeding into sickly yellow at the edges. Fresh enough to still be tender. Old enough that whoever did it had done it days ago and watched it develop. Her right eye was nearly shut. She was squinting through it, head tilted slightly, to compensate the way kids do when they're trying to act like pain is manageable. She walked straight toward him, not hesitant, not the way children approach strangers with all that built-in caution. She walked like she'd already made her decision and was simply executing the necessary steps. Her hands were clasped in front of her fingers, pressing into each other, and even from 10 feet away, he could see they were shaking. Ray didn't move. He just watched her come. She stopped about 3 feet from him, looked up. Her one good eye was dark brown, almost black in certain light, and it held something no child's eye should hold. Not fear exactly, something older than fear, something that had already walked through fear and come out the other side operating on necessity alone. They looked at each other for a moment that felt longer than it was. Then she unclenched her hands and held out what she was carrying. Money, crumpled bills and coins. He could see quarters, mostly maybe a dime. She held it all pressed together in both palms like she was afraid it might escape. "I need to hire you," she said. Her voice was steadier than her hands. That was the thing that cut through everything else. The voice was doing work the rest of her couldn't quite manage, holding the line, keeping things from collapse. Ray looked at the money, looked at her face, looked at the money again. "Hire me," he repeated, not a question, testing the weight of the word. "Yes, sir." She nodded once sharp, decisive. "I know what you are. I've seen your kind before. My friend Tommy's uncle is one of you, and Tommy said you all look out for people when it matters. So I need you to look out for my mom." Something moved in Ray's chest. Not emotion yet, not the full weight of it. More like the warning signal before the real thing arrives. He crouched down slow, bringing himself to her level. She didn't step back, didn't flinch, just recalibrated her gaze to meet his without looking away. "What's your name?" he said. "Lily." "Lily." He said it like he was filing it somewhere important. My name's Ray. I know, she said. I asked the man at the car station down the road what the leader's name was. He said Ray. He said you were the big one with the gray in his beard. Ray almost smiled. Almost. You planned this out. Yes, sir. I've been waiting since this morning. I saw your group come through last week and I thought maybe you'd come back this way. The weight of that settled on him heavier than the heat. This child had waited all morning in this heat. With that face waiting for a group of bikers she had no guarantee would return because she had no other option she could think of. Who did that to your face, he asked, kept his voice level. Years ago, he'd learned that when you ask a hurt person something direct, tone matters more than the question. Her jaw tightened, not with fear, with something more like controlled anger, the kind that lives just beneath the surface in people who've learned that letting it out doesn't help anything. My stepdad, she said. Dennis? Does he do this often? To me, sometimes. To my mom, more. She said it flat, the way someone states a fact they have already made peace with internally because the alternative was falling apart. He hit my mom last night, and she couldn't get up off the kitchen floor for a long time, and I sat with her and I counted to 1,000, and she still wasn't right. Her eye looks like mine, but worse. Ray's hands resting on his knees as he crouched, pressed in slightly. Where's your mom now? Inside. Working. Lily glanced toward the diner, then back at him. She waitresses here. Dottie lets her keep the tips separate so Dennis doesn't take them all. But Dennis knows where she works. He's coming to pick us up at 4 o'clock, and he's been drinking since this morning. I could smell it on him before I left. What time is it now? Almost 2. 2 hours. Ray stood up slowly. He didn't take the money from her hands. She was still holding it out, still waiting, and there was something in that gesture. The patience of it, the stubborn insistence that made the crack in his chest open a little wider. Put your money away, Lily. Her face changed, not collapse. She was too controlled for collapse, but a ripple of something. Disappointment, maybe. The first crack in the composure she'd been holding so carefully. I can get more, she said quickly. I've got more at home in my sock drawer. I just couldn't bring it all because that's not what I meant. He looked at her steadily. I mean, I don't want your money. I mean, put it away because you're going to need it for something that actually matters. She stared at him. I don't understand, she said. I'm going to help you, Ray said. Not because you're paying me, because you asked me, and because you need it, and because what you just told me makes it impossible for me to get on that bike and ride away. You understand? She blinked. The one good eye and the nearly shut one both doing the work of processing something she hadn't planned for. You're not going to take the money, she said slowly, like translating. No, but I need you to take it. If you take it, it means it's a deal. It means you have to do it. If you don't take it, you can just... She stopped herself, looked away for a second at the ground, at her broken sneaker light, still blinking. When she looked back up, the controlled anger was doing something else now, holding something back that had the texture of tears, though none came. I can't have you just saying you'll help and then leaving. I can't. I've had people say that before. The silence between them lasted exactly long enough for Ray to understand what she wasn't saying. She'd been let down before, more than once, by people who were supposed to help and didn't, by adults who saw what was happening and looked away, by a system that had maybe been called and maybe hadn't done enough, by teachers or neighbors or someone's promises that dissolved the moment the cost of keeping them became inconvenient. She was 8 years old, and she'd already learned the specific and terrible lesson that words were cheap and people left. And she was standing here anyway, offering $15 to a man she'd never met, who lived a life most people crossed the street to avoid because she'd run out of every other option, and this was what was left. Ray held out his hand, palm up. She looked at it. If it makes it real for you, he said quietly, I'll take $1 and I'll give it back to you when this is done. But I want you to know I would help you either way. That's not about the money. That's just about what kind of man I am. Something shifted in her expression. The guardedness didn't go away. It wouldn't not that easily, and Ray didn't expect it to. But something underneath it moved. She peeled $1 from the stack and placed it in his palm. He closed his fingers around it. Deal, he said. Deal, she said. And then for just a moment, one small, unguarded moment that she probably didn't even know she was having, the composure cracked, and she looked exactly like what she was. A little girl, 8 years old, exhausted and scared and relieved in a way that made her whole body seem to sag slightly, like a knot finally coming loose. You should probably know, Ray said, straightening up, that there are 6 other men in there who are going to want to hear this story. She looked at the diner door. Are they like you? Some of them, he said. All of them today, I think. He led her inside. The interior of Dottie's was what it always was. Booths along the walls, stools at the counter ceiling fan, turning slow enough that it was more gesture than function. The smell of coffee and grease soaked into the walls over decades until it was just part of what the air was made of. His brothers were spread across 2 booths, menus open, Hector already deep into a conversation with the waitress about the pie situation. The waitress wasn't Claire. He'd figure that out in a moment. But he noticed something else first. The way the energy in the room shifted when he walked in with Lily beside him. One by one, his brothers looked up. Hector mid-sentence. Big Dave with his coffee cup halfway to his mouth. Tomas folding his menu. And each of them in the order they registered the scene. This grizzled road veteran of a man and this tiny bruised little girl walking beside him like they had an appointment. Each of them went still in exactly the same way. The way people go still when they see something they know without being told is going to matter. Hey, Ray said to the room, unnecessarily. Nobody responded. They were all looking at Lily. Lily, to her credit, looked back at all of them without flinching. This is Lily, Ray said. She just hired me. Hector set his coffee cup down. She hired you $1 binding contract. What's the job? Big Dave asked. His voice was low, cautious. His eyes on Lily's face, the bruise specifically, which in the fluorescent light of the diner was even more visible, even more precisely wrong, in the way that injuries to children are always precisely wrong, always a violence against the natural order of things. Her stepdad's coming to pick up her and her mom in about 2 hours, Ray said. He's been drinking since morning. He did that to her face, and he did worse to her mom last night. The silence in the diner had a particular quality now. Not the comfortable silence of a slow afternoon. Something else. Something pressurized. Tomas spoke first. He was the quietest of them, usually the one who watched more than talked, and when he spoke, it counted. Is the mom here? She works here, Lily spoke up. Her voice was steady again, recovered. She's in the back. She doesn't know I came out to talk to you. She'd be upset. Why? Hector asked, not unkindly. Because she'd be scared it would make things worse. Lily's jaw tightened again with that particular controlled anger. She always thinks if she doesn't make it a big deal, Dennis will calm down. But he doesn't calm down. He just waits until there's no one around, and then he's worse than before. The words fell into the room with a weight everyone there recognized. These were not men who'd lived sheltered lives. They'd seen the world at its most unfiltered, and every single one of them recognized what Lily was describing. The specific and suffocating logic of an abusive household. The way victims learn to make themselves small and quiet and invisible in hopes the storm passes. The way that strategy never ever actually works. Big Dave put both hands flat on the table. So he's coming here, he said slowly. A man who's been drinking all day to pick up a woman and a child in a public place. At 4 o'clock, Lily confirmed. And you thought the best people to handle that, Hector said slowly, were us. Lily looked at him with that one clear eye and said, without any irony, without any awareness of how remarkable the statement was, you were the only ones I knew who wouldn't be scared of him. The look that passed between the men at that table was not a look that needed translating. It was the look of people who had just been handed something that rearranged in a quiet but permanent way the priorities of the next few hours. Ray pulled up a chair beside the booth and gestured for Lily to sit. She did, perching on the edge of it with her back very straight, her hands folded in her lap, her crumpled $14 and change back in her pocket. "Tell me about Dennis," Ray said. "Tell me everything." She did. She talked for almost 20 minutes. The men ordered food because they needed to stay and needed a reason to stay, and because Lily needed to see them settling and committing. And they listened. And as Lily talked, the picture assembled itself piece by piece the way pictures always do when someone's telling the truth. Not in a clean line, but in fragments, in doubling backs, in details that seem small until they're next to each other, and then they're not small at all. Dennis Pruitt was 43 years old. He'd been with Lily's mom, Claire, for 4 years, married for 2. He worked at a machine shop outside of town and worked competently. Showed up on time, was regarded by his coworkers as a guy who kept to himself but seemed solid enough. The face he showed the world was assembled carefully and maintained with the specific and obsessive discipline of a man who knows exactly what he's hiding. "He's smart," Lily said, and there was something almost bitter in the way she said it. The bitterness of someone who's been outmaneuvered repeatedly and understands exactly how. "He never does it where people can see. He never leaves marks on your face unless he's really out of control like lately. Usually it's where your clothes cover. He knows about that stuff. He knows what people look for." "Has your mom tried to leave?" Big Dave asked. Lily's expression went through something complicated and arrived somewhere tired. "4 times. Twice she went to her aunt's house. He came there both times and there was so much yelling, and one time he put a hole in the wall and her aunt told her she couldn't come back because of her kids. Once she went to a shelter, but she had to leave her car behind and she didn't have a way to get to work and she lost the job she had then. And once she tried to just go to the motel with me for a week and save up money, but he..." She stopped, started again. "He has a way of finding out things. She doesn't know how. She thinks maybe he looks at her phone. We can't prove it." "Is there a police report?" Thomas asked. "There's 2 from 2 years ago. Nothing happened. Dennis told them she fell. She didn't fight it because he told her what would happen if she did." Lily looked at her hands. "She's not weak. I want you to know that. People look at her and they think she's weak, but she's not. She's just the thing he's best at is making her believe she's got nowhere to go, that nobody will help, that if she tries anything, he'll make sure she loses me too, and she can't." Her voice for the first time lost some of its steadiness. "Just for a moment. Just enough. She can't lose me. I'm all she's got. He knows that. He uses it." Ray said nothing for a long moment. Then he said carefully, "She's not going to lose you." Lily looked at him. "You don't know that," she said. Not accusing, just precise. "Not yet," he said, "but I know more now than I did an hour ago. And in about 90 minutes, I'm going to know a lot more." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to talk to your mom first if she'll let me." Lily considered this. Something in her expression shifted. A new concern, a new calculation. "She might not. She might get scared and tell you to leave. If Dennis finds out she talked to someone, he'll..." "She won't know I'm someone your mom talked to," Ray said. "She'll know I'm someone you came and found. That's different. That puts the decision back on you, not her. He can't punish her for something she didn't choose." Lily was quiet for a moment then. "You've thought about this kind of thing before." "In different ways," Ray said. "But yeah." She nodded slowly. Then she slid off the chair and stood up. "I'll go get her," she said. "I'll tell her I met someone who wants to talk. I won't say about the deal. Is that okay?" "That's okay." She walked to the back of the diner without looking at any of the other men. At the kitchen door, she paused and turned back. "Ray," she said. "Yeah, thank you." And then before he could respond to it, before any of the complicated weight of those 2 words could fully land, she was through the door and gone. The table was quiet for a beat. Then Hector leaned forward and said low, You know this is going to get complicated. I know, Ray said. And you don't care. Ray looked at the kitchen door where Lily had gone. Not even slightly, he said. Claire Brennan came through that kitchen door, wiping her hands on her apron, and the first thing Ray noticed was that she walked the way people walk when they've spent years making themselves smaller. Shoulders slightly forward, chin slightly down. The posture of someone who's learned that taking up space invites consequences. She was younger than he expected. Mid-30s maybe, though the exhaustion on her face was doing its best to add a decade. Her hair was pulled back tight, and on the left side of her face beneath her eye was a bruise that mirrored her daughter's, with a cruelty that made something cold move through Ray's chest. Lily was 2 steps behind her, watching her mother's face the way only children in dangerous homes watch their parents, reading every micro-expression, every flicker, cataloging data in real time because their safety depends on accurate interpretation. Claire stopped when she saw the table. 6 men, leather vests, eyes on her. She took 1 step back. Lily, what? Mom. Lily's voice was calm, the steadiness back in full force. It's okay, I promise. It's not okay, you don't. Claire's eyes moved quickly across the table, doing the same rapid threat assessment her daughter did, just applied to a different category of danger. She'd spent years reading men for signs of violence. She was doing it now. Fast. Practiced. I don't know these people. I know, Lily said. But I do. I met them outside. The one in the middle is Ray. He's the one I told you I wanted to talk to. Claire looked at Lily, then at Ray, then back at Lily. You didn't tell me you wanted to talk to anyone. You said you met someone. I met Ray, Lily said patiently. He's someone. The specific and painful logic of a child. Even in the middle of the tension filling the space between the kitchen door and the table, Big Dave made a sound that was almost a laugh before he caught it and killed it. Ray stood up, slowly, deliberately making every movement readable, non-threatening, telegraphing intention the way you would around a spooked animal, except that framing was wrong, and he knew it because this woman wasn't an animal. She was a human being who'd been trained by years of specific and targeted abuse to register any sudden movement as a precursor to pain. Mrs. Brennan, he said, my name's Ray Mitchell. I'm not going to sell you anything. I'm not going to ask you for anything, and I'm not going to tell you what to do. I just want to talk. You can leave any time you want. She looked at him, really looked at him. The gray in his beard, the lines in his face, the hands that were large and could clearly do damage, but were hanging loose and open at his sides right now. Lily came to you, she said. It wasn't quite a question. Yes. Why? It wasn't a question either. It was the real version of it. Not asking why logistically, but asking why he was the person her daughter had decided to trust. Why her 8-year-old had walked up to a stranger with a bruised face and whatever she had in her pocket and made a deal. I think Ray said carefully, you'd have to ask her, but the reason I'm still here is because she told me some things that made leaving impossible. Claire's jaw tightened. She looked at Lily with an expression that held genuine fear in it. Lily, what did you tell him? The truth, Lily said. Lily. Mom. And the child's voice was gentle now. Not the controlled anger steadiness from before, but genuinely gentle with a tenderness in it that was almost unbearable to hear from someone so small. You're not in trouble. You didn't do anything wrong. I did it. Me. So if anyone's in trouble, it's me, and I decided that was okay. Claire pressed her lips together. Her eyes went bright for a moment, that particular brightness that happens just before tears the body's warning signal, and then she controlled it. Controlled it with the same practiced efficiency her daughter had shown, and Ray understood in that moment exactly where Lily had learned it. Sit down with us, he said to Claire. Please, you don't have to. She stood in the middle of the room for another moment. Then she pulled out the chair across from Ray and sat down on the edge of it the same way Lily had. Back straight, ready to stand, ready to run if running became necessary. Lily came around and sat beside her and put one small hand on her mother's arm, and Claire's hand came up and covered it automatically, protectively, and held it. Dennis is coming at 4, Ray said. Claire's breath caught, just slightly, just enough. I know, she said. He's been drinking. He called me at noon. Her voice was flat now, the flatness of someone managing information that frightens them by refusing to give it any space. He does that sometimes. Calls when she stopped, looked at her hands. I was going to try to get out before 4, take Lily walk to the gas station, call my cousin Renee, but he took my phone this morning and I can't use the diner phone because Carol's been. She stopped again, started differently. I was going to figure something out. You've been figuring something out for 4 years, Ray said. Not accusatory, just true. And because it was just true and not an accusation, it landed differently than she expected it to, and her composure shifted for just a second. Yes, she said, very quietly. You're tired. The word hit her somewhere she wasn't guarded for. She looked up at him, and in her eyes past the weariness and the threat assessment and all the armor she'd built up there was something raw and exhausted and real. I'm so tired, she said. And then as if the admission had cost her something she'd been saving, she pressed her lips together hard and looked away. Lily's hand tightened on her mother's arm. Tomas leaned forward then, elbows on the table, his voice quiet and direct. Claire, I want to ask you something and I want you to think about it before you answer. Not because I'm trying to pressure you, but because it matters. Does Dennis know anyone locally? Anyone connected law enforcement officials? Anyone who's helped him avoid consequences before? Claire looked at him slowly. His cousin is a deputy, she said. Jim Pruitt. He was the one who took the report 2 years ago. She paused. Both times, the quiet at the table had a new texture to it. Both reports, Ray said. Jim Pruitt took both. Yes, she seemed to hear in the repetition what it implied. I didn't put that together until after the second time, when nothing happened either time, when Dennis came home that night laughing. Ray looked at Tomas. Tomas looked back at him. A full conversation passed between them in half a second. Okay, Ray said, and his voice had shifted. Still calm, but there was something underneath it now. Something with more steel in it, more certainty. Here's what I want to do, and again, you're in charge of this. You make the call, but I want you to hear it first. Claire nodded once. We stay here until 4, all of us. When Dennis arrives, I talk to him. Not about police reports, not about cousins who are deputies, not about anything that gives him a lever to use later. I talk to him man to man in a parking lot in front of witnesses, and I tell him clearly that today is the last day he comes near you and Lily, that you're leaving, that you have people now, and that the calculus of continuing to do what he's been doing has permanently changed. Claire was already shaking her head. He won't listen. You don't know him. When he's been drinking, he doesn't listen to anyone. He'll escalate. He'll make a scene, and then tonight after you're gone, we're not going anywhere tonight, Ray said. She stopped. I've got a brother in Beaumont who runs a halfway house for women in exactly your situation. Ray continued. He's got 2 empty rooms right now. It's safe. It's off-grid enough that someone would have to know where to look, and it's got resources. Legal help, job placement, the whole thing, not perfect. Nothing's perfect, but it's real and it's available today. Claire stared at him. Tonight, she said. Tonight if you want it. The silence stretched, and inside that silence, something was happening on Claire's face. Something complicated and fragile and enormous. The specific internal landscape of a person who's been told for years that there is no exit, that the doors are all locked, that wanting out is itself a kind of weakness, and who is now sitting across from a stranger who's telling her that one of those doors is open. The difficulty was not deciding to go through it. The difficulty was believing it was real, believing it wouldn't close the moment she reached for it. He'll find us, she said. Maybe he'll try. You can't just, she shook her head. You can't promise that. You don't live here. You'll leave and he'll, Claire. Ray's voice was steady, deliberate. Look at me. She looked at him. I'm not asking you to trust the world. The world has earned exactly the amount of trust you're giving it right now, which isn't much, and that's fair. I'm asking you to trust the next 2 hours. That's it. Can you do 2 hours? She was quiet for a long moment. Then Lily, who had been sitting still and silent during all of this, said without looking up from the table, "Mom, he took my dollar." Claire blinked, looked at her daughter. "What?" "I gave him $1. It's a deal. He has to help us now." Lily looked up, and in her expression was something almost fiercely simple. The particular clarity of a child who's decided that the adults around her are overcomplicating something that, at its core, is not complicated. "He already said yes. I already did the hard part. You just have to let him." The sound Claire made was not quite a laugh and not quite a sob, and was entirely its own thing. The sound of a person at the end of something long and terrible, fighting against all expectation that the end has a door in it. She put her face in her hands for just a moment, just one moment. Then she took them away and her eyes were wet, but she was steady. 2 hours, she said. 2 hours, Ray said. What happened in the next 90 minutes was the particular kind of busy that looks like calm on the outside. Hector made a phone call stepping outside, keeping his voice low to Ray's brother in Beaumont. Big Dave sat with Claire and Lily in the corner booth, the two of them talking quietly. Dave mostly listening in the way he was good at, which was listening like he had nowhere else to be, and nothing more important to do, which in that moment was true. Tomas got the name of Claire's cousin Renee and tracked her down through 3 phone calls and a lot of patience because Renee needed to hear Claire's voice before she'd believe any of it. And once she did, she needed to cry for about 4 minutes before she pulled herself together and said she'd been waiting for this call for 2 years. Claire held the borrowed phone with both hands and said, "I know, Renee. I know." And then she had to hand it back before she lost her composure completely. Ray stood by the window. He'd done enough, said enough for now. The thing he'd learned over years of situations that required him to be the one standing steady in the middle of chaos was that there was a moment when you step back and let what you'd set in motion continue on its own momentum. Step back too early and it collapsed. Step back too late and you became a crutch. This felt like the right moment. He thought about Lily. He thought about the particular way she'd walked across that gravel parking lot, not tentatively, not with the shuffling uncertainty of a child unsure of her reception, but with that strange and heartbreaking deliberateness, like she'd done all her being uncertain in private, and what she brought to him was only the conclusion, the decision, the $15. He'd met a lot of people in a lot of circumstances. He'd been in situations that required courage from people who had every rational reason not to have it. But something about this child's particular brand of it, the planning, the waiting, the controlled voice, the way she looked at him with that one good eye and said, "I need to hire you," like it was the most logical statement in the world, sat in his chest differently than most things. He was still standing there when the sound came from outside. Not at 4 o'clock, at 10 minutes to 3. The truck that pulled into the parking lot was a dark blue Ford one-tail light, out a long scrape along the passenger side door that looked like it had been there for a while and nobody had cared to fix it. It moved too fast, turned too sharp, stopped at an angle that took up more space than it needed to. Dennis Pruitt was an hour early, and he was already out of the truck before the engine fully died, moving toward the diner door, with the particular gait of a man who's been drinking since morning and has decided somewhere in the haze that something needs addressing now. He was bigger than Ray had pictured from Lily's description. Thick through the shoulders, the kind of bulk that comes from physical work, rather than a gym, carrying himself with the forward-leaning aggression of someone who's learned that size gets you most things before a word is spoken. Hector appeared at Ray's shoulder from nowhere. "Early. I see him. How do you want to do this?" Ray was already moving toward the door. He stepped outside before Dennis reached it, letting the door close behind him. Dennis pulled up short, startled, recalibrating. Looked at Ray the way men like Dennis always looked at unexpected obstacles, with immediate reflexive hostility. "The hell are you?" Dennis said. "Just a guy getting some coffee," Ray said pleasantly. hands loose. Dennis looked him up and down. The vest, the patches, the gray in the beard, the size of the man wearing all of it. Some of the forward momentum hesitated. Dennis was drunk, not stupid, and the body's threat detection works even through a day of drinking. "You're blocking the door," Dennis said. "Door's right there," Ray said, not moving. "Plenty of room. I'm here to pick up my wife. Claire's not ready yet. She's on shift for another hour." Dennis's jaw shifted. "How do you know my wife's name?" "Small place," Ray said. "Everybody knows everybody." It was a nothing answer, a placeholder, and Dennis knew it was a nothing answer. His eyes narrowed. "I wasn't asking a guy like you. I was stating where I'm going." He took a step to the left toward the door. Ray shifted his weight by about 2 inches. It wasn't a step. It wasn't a block. It was the kind of movement that communicated without any words at all, that the space between Dennis and the door had a presence in it that wasn't moving. Dennis stopped. "Who are you?" he said, and this time it wasn't casual. It was the sharp edge of a man whose control is slipping. "I told you, guy getting coffee." Ray looked at him evenly. "But I'll tell you something else too since we're talking. You want to go in there, you're going to go in there as a man who has himself under control. That's the only version of you that goes through that door." Dennis stared at him. Something moved in his face. The recalibration of a man who knows on some level that he is being seen. Not just looked at, seen. And there is a specific kind of rage that this produces in men like Dennis. Men who have built their entire operation on being the only one in the room who sees clearly, who knows what's actually happening, who holds all the information. Being seen dismantles something essential in that architecture. "You have no idea," Dennis said low and tight, "what you are getting into." "Maybe not," Ray said. "But I know what you've been doing. I know what her face looks like. And I know what your daughter's face looks like. And I know you were drinking before 9 o'clock this morning. And I know you're an hour early because something in you figured the earlier you showed up, the less time she had to think." He paused. "I'm not wrong about any of that." The silence between them was the loudest thing in the parking lot. Dennis's hands had closed into fists at his sides. The cords in his neck were tight. His breathing had changed. "You're going to walk away from this," he said. "You don't know what I can do." "I know exactly what you can do," Ray said. "You can do it to women and children when there are no witnesses and no consequences. That's what you can do. That's all you can do." He let that sit for exactly a second. "This is a lot of witnesses, and I'm about to be a consequence." Dennis moved, not toward Ray, not quite, not fully, the self-preservation instinct cutting through the whiskey just enough. But his body surged forward, the involuntary lurch of someone who's been operating unchecked for so long that the existence of a check is physically disorienting. His hand came up, and Ray's hand came up faster. Not to strike, just to stop. His palm flat against Dennis's chest, the full solid weight of him behind it, immovable. "Don't," Ray said, one word, quiet. And behind Ray the diner door opened. Hector stepped out, and then Big Dave, and then Tomas. They didn't say anything. They didn't have to. They simply stood there in a row in the afternoon heat, looking at Dennis Pruitt with the calm and patient expressions of men who have all the time in the world. Dennis's arm dropped. His breathing was ragged. His eyes moved across the row of men and came back to Ray, and in them was something that had not been there a minute ago. Not fear exactly, men like Dennis didn't process fear cleanly, but a recalculation, a sudden and unwilling awareness that the math of this situation had changed in ways he hadn't accounted for. "This isn't over," he said. "No," Ray agreed. "It's not, but this part is." Inside the diner behind the glass, Claire Brennan stood with her daughter and watched her husband's face do something she had never seen it do in 4 years of marriage. He backed up. He actually backed up. Lily felt her mother's hand go completely still on her shoulder, then grip harder. Not from fear, from something else entirely. Something that didn't have a clean name but felt in Lily's chest like the first full breath she'd taken in longer than she could remember. Dennis Pruitt didn't leave the parking lot right away. That was the thing that kept Ray's attention locked on him even after the man stopped moving forward. A man who is genuinely backing down gets in his vehicle and goes. A man who is regrouping stays visible, stays planted, lets you see him thinking. And Dennis was thinking. Ray could see it happening in real time. The whiskey slowed calculations behind the man's eyes, the reassessment, the search for a different angle. Men like Dennis always had a different angle. That was the engine of the whole thing. When force didn't work, they found leverage. When leverage didn't work, they found guilt. When guilt didn't work, they went back to force and called it love. Dennis looked past Ray at the diner window. He could see Claire and Lily in there. Ray knew that without turning around, knew it the way you know when someone's gaze passes over your shoulder and lands on something behind you. Something changed in Dennis's face. Not softening, nothing that clean, but a shift in strategy. He reached up and rubbed his jaw with one hand, and when he looked back at Ray, the hostility had been dialed down one notch and replaced with something that wanted to look like reason. "Look," Dennis said, "I don't know what she told you, but you're only hearing one side." "I'm hearing the side with the bruises on it," Ray said. "She falls. She's always been clumsy since before I—" "Don't," Ray said. The word was quiet and absolute. Dennis's mouth closed. "I've had this conversation before," Ray said, "with men who were better at it than you. Don't run the script. It won't work here, and it wastes both our time." He took one step forward, bringing himself into the range where there was no question about whether Dennis could hear him clearly. "Here's what's happening. Claire and Lily are going to walk out of that diner in about 45 minutes. They're going to get into a vehicle that isn't yours. They're going to go somewhere you don't know about. And that's going to be the end of your ability to put your hands on either of them. That's the only thing happening today." Dennis stared at him. The calculation was still running behind his eyes, but something else was running alongside it now. The first real tremor of the thing men like Dennis almost never had to feel, which was a sickening awareness that someone else controlled the outcome of this situation. That he was not, for the first time in a very long time, the most dangerous thing in the room. "She's my wife," he said, and his voice had gone oddly tight, almost strangled. "She won't be for long," Ray said. "And you know it. You've known it for a while. That's why you've been drinking since morning." That landed. Ray watched it land, watched Dennis's face do something involuntary, a flinch that came from somewhere below the level of conscious control. Because Ray had named the thing Dennis had been drinking to outrun all day. The awareness on some level beneath all his certainty and his dominance and his careful management of everyone around him that he was losing. That the architecture he'd spent years building was showing cracks he hadn't been able to seal. "This isn't over," Dennis said again. "You said that already," Hector said from behind Ray, and his voice had the particular lightness of a man who isn't threatened and wants that fact to be clearly communicated. Dennis looked at Hector, then at Big Dave, then back at Ray. Then he got in his truck. He sat in it for almost 3 minutes without starting the engine, and every one of those minutes had a specific weight to it. Ray stood exactly where he was, and his brothers stood where they were, and nobody moved because moving would have meant something, and staying meant something else. Staying meant this is not something you wait out. Staying meant we will be here when you come back. Staying meant we have done the math and we know how this ends and we are not afraid of any version of it. The engine turned over. The truck moved too fast, cutting across the lot at the wrong angle, gravel spraying. It was gone. Hector exhaled slowly. "He'll come back." "Yes," Ray said, "before they leave." "Maybe. Probably not. He's going to go somewhere and drink more and make phone calls and try to find a liver. He'll want to feel like he's got a plan before he comes back." Ray turned and looked at the diner window. Claire and Lily were still there. Claire's hand was on the glass. He hadn't noticed that before. Her palm flat against it as if she could feel the temperature of what had just happened through the barrier between them. "We've got maybe an hour," Ray said. "Let's use it." Inside, the diner had rearranged itself emotionally while the confrontation was happening outside. Carol, the owner, a woman in her 60s who had said exactly 4 words since Ray's group arrived and had apparently decided to renegotiate that position, was standing behind the counter with her arms crossed and an expression on her face that said she had been watching from the moment Dennis's truck pulled in and had formed a complete and unambiguous opinion about everything. "He's gone?" she asked as Ray came through the door. "For now." Carol nodded once. The nod of a woman who has been watching Claire Brennan come into work for 2 years with careful makeup over things that makeup couldn't quite cover. Who has been keeping tip money separate without being asked because she understood the mechanics of the situation without needing it explained. Who has been waiting for something to change and has now watched something change and is ready to help without any more preamble than that. "I've got a number," Carol said. "A woman who does this helps women get out. She's local. I've had it in my wallet for 3 months." She pulled a folded piece of paper from her apron pocket and set it on the counter. "I've been waiting for the right moment to give it to Claire, but there wasn't ever a moment where she felt safe enough to hear it." Ray looked at the paper, then at Carol. "Why didn't you call anyone?" he asked, not accusatory. He genuinely wanted to understand. Carol's expression shifted into something that held considerable weight. "I called once, a year and a half ago. 2 deputies came. One of them was Jim Pruitt." She pressed her lips together. "That was the last time I called." The piece of paper sat on the counter between them. Ray picked it up. But there was something else Carol wanted to say. She reached under the counter and pulled out her phone, unlocked it, scrolled through photos with the careful deliberateness of someone who has kept a secret for a long time and is finally ready to let it out. "I took these," she said quietly, turning the phone so Ray could see, "over the last 2 years, every time Claire came in with something new. A bruise, a cut, a limp she tried to hide. I told her I was showing her pictures of my grandkids, but I was taking pictures of her, dates and times, all of it." Ray looked at the phone, image after image. Claire's face from different angles, her arms, her neck, each photo time-stamped, each one a piece of evidence that Carol had been quietly, carefully collecting because she knew that someday someone might need it. "I didn't know what else to do," Carol said. "I couldn't call the police. I couldn't force her to leave. But I could do this. I could make sure there was a record." Ray looked at this woman, this diner owner, in a small Texas town who had turned her phone into a 2-year documentation project because she couldn't save Claire herself, but she could make damn sure that when someone finally could, they'd have what they needed. "Can I get copies of these?" Ray asked. "I already sent them to myself. You give me an email address. I'll send them to you right now." Ray gave her Tomas's email. Carol's fingers moved over her phone with surprising speed, and 30 seconds later, Tomas's phone buzzed in his pocket. "Thank you," Ray said. "Don't thank me," Carol said. "Just get her out." Claire was in the corner booth with Lily, and when Ray came and sat across from them, he put the paper on the table between them. Claire looked at it without touching it. Her eyes went up to him, then to the window, checking even now, even after watching Dennis drive away. The involuntary threat check that had become as automatic as breathing. "He left," Ray said. "He'll be back, but not right now." Claire nodded slowly. She was holding it together with both hands, which was how he thought of it. Not literally, but the quality of her composure had a held quality to it. Something actively maintained rather than naturally present. Like she was running a calculation simultaneously with existing, monitoring her own stability the way you monitor a car that's been making a sound you don't trust. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Yeah." "Why are you doing this?" She looked at him directly, and in the question was not suspicion exactly, but a kind of earnest bewilderment. The specific bewilderment of someone who has operated in a world where people don't help without a paste and is trying to locate the cost. "Your daughter hired me," Ray said, "for $1. Best dollar I ever earned." Claire looked at Lily, and Lily looked back at her mother with an expression that was quietly, steadily certain. The expression of someone who made a decision and has not moved from it and does not intend to, no matter what. She told me this morning, Claire said quietly, before I came to work. She said, Mom, today is the day things change. I thought she was, her voice caught slightly. I thought she was just saying something, the way kids do, to make you feel better. She meant it, Ray said. I know that now. Claire looked at the paper on the table. What is this, a resource? Someone local who helps women in your situation. He paused. But I want you to know you don't have to use that. The offer in Beaumont is real. My brother's place is real. You can use either one or both. You're not trading one set of instructions for another. Something in Claire's posture shifted at that, at the specific phrasing of it, the deliberate care in it. He had noticed that she tensed slightly every time anyone suggested a course of action. The conditioned response of someone who has spent years having her choices managed, having her decisions made for her, having the concept of her own agency slowly and methodically dismantled. He'd been careful about how he framed things because of that, and she'd noticed him being careful, and the noticing of it was doing something in her expression right now that looked a lot like someone beginning to believe something they'd almost entirely stopped believing. I have a question, Lily said. Both adults looked at her. His cousin, Lily said. Jim Pruitt, the deputy. What if Dennis calls him and tells him we're here? What if Jim comes before we leave? It was an 8-year-old asking the question, but it was the right question. The strategically correct and necessary question that cut to the actual logistical heart of the problem, and the fact that she was the one to ask it, made Big Dave, sitting at the adjacent table, quietly shake his head with an expression that was equal parts admiration and sorrow. I've thought about that, Tomas said. He was already on his phone. I've got a contact at the state level. Not a friend exactly, but someone who owes me a conversation. I'm going to make a call that puts the name Jim Pruitt into a system that Jim Pruitt can't see coming. It won't solve everything today, but it'll mean that whatever Jim does in the next 2 hours is going to have a record. Lily processed this. That means Dennis calling Jim doesn't help Dennis. It means Dennis calling Jim might hurt Dennis, Thomas said. Yeah, Lily nodded satisfied. The nod of a person who asked for information and received it and has now filed it in the appropriate place. Claire watched her daughter do this, and something moved through her expression. Something that was love and grief at the same time, the specific grief of a parent who sees their child being brave in a way that children shouldn't have to be brave, who sees competencies in their kid that only exist because of the hardness of their life, who would trade all those competencies in a second for the ability to give the child back the softness that the hardness required. Lily, Claire said softly. I'm okay, Mom. I know you are. She reached over and touched Lily's face very gently, the unbruised side, her thumb just grazing her daughter's cheekbone. That's what kills me. The diner was quiet for a moment. The ceiling fan turned. Someone's coffee cooled. Then Hector's phone buzzed, and the moment broke. He looked at the screen, and his expression changed in a way that made Ray look at him sharply. What? Dennis didn't go to drink, Hector said. He turned the phone so Ray could see the screen. It was a text, a number Ray didn't recognize. 3 words, he's at Jim's. Ray looked at the number. Who is this? Don't know, but whoever it is, they just told us Dennis went straight to his cousin. Not to a bar, not to regroup, straight to a deputy. Hector looked up. Someone in that family or close to it just broke ranks and told us. The room recalibrated. The timeline had just compressed. Jim Pruitt knowing meant the possibility of a deputy arriving at the diner officially with all the weight and cover of a badge, and the entire situation flipping on its axis. Jim could claim a domestic call, could claim Claire needed a welfare check, could manufacture enough official-sounding confusion to buy Dennis the window he needed. We need to move faster, Ray said. He looked at Claire. This changes the clock. Can you be ready in 15 minutes? Claire looked around the diner, at Carol's counter, at the apron she was still wearing at the shift she'd never finished, at the small and limited version of a life she had built inside these walls, because it was the safest place she'd found. Then she looked at Lily. I've been ready, she said. I've been ready for 2 years. I just needed... She stopped. 15 minutes. Yes. Go, Ray said. Claire was already up, already moving to the back. Carol was right behind her, and Ray could hear the older woman's voice, low and efficient. You take the tips from the last 3 weeks, Claire. I've been holding them. Don't you argue with me. Just take them. Lily sat at the table with Ray and watched the door her mother had gone through. Her face had that quality again. The controlled stillness, the real-time assessment running underneath it. But there was something else now, too. Something new. Something that hadn't been there in the parking lot when she'd walked up to him with $15 and a bruised face. It took him a moment to name it: hope. Not the reckless kind. Not the kind that floats. The careful, tentative, still suspicious kind. The kind that has been burned enough times to know better than to fully declare itself. But is there any way, crouched in the corner of her expression, watching the door her mother went through and counting seconds? Hey, Ray said. She looked at him. You did the right thing today, he said. You did something really hard, and you did it right. She considered this with the same seriousness she applied to everything. I was scared, she said. I almost didn't come out. When I saw the bikes, I almost went back inside. I stood behind the diner for 15 minutes before I came out. 15 minutes is nothing, Ray said. That just means you thought about it. People who don't think about it aren't brave. They're just reckless. You thought about it and came out anyway. That's the whole definition. She looked at him for a moment. Then she said, is your life always like this? Going places and helping people? Not always, he said honestly. Sometimes it's just the road. Do you like that better? He thought about it, actually thought about it, gave the question the real consideration she'd asked it with. Some days, he said. Today, no. She almost smiled. The corner of her mouth moved, almost. Then the back door of the diner opened hard, and Claire came through it fast, a bag on her shoulder, her apron gone. Carol, right behind her, pressing a white envelope into her hands and saying, take it, Claire. I mean it. And Claire was crying. Not loudly, just the tears running fast and quiet down her face. The tears of a woman who has been given something she didn't know how to ask for, by a person she didn't know had been saving it for her. And then Hector was at the front window, his voice sharp and low. Ray? Ray was already turning. A deputy's cruiser had just turned into the parking lot, not Jim Pruitt's personal vehicle. A cruiser, official. Light bar on top, not running, but there. The car parked deliberately, taking its time, which was its own kind of message. Deliberate slowness as authority. The performance of having all the time in the world because the badge gives you that. The deputy who stepped out was in his 40s, heavier than the badge photo Ray had mentally constructed from Lily's description, with the careful walk of a man who has thought about how he's going to play this before he got here. Jim Pruitt. He looked at the line of motorcycles. He looked at Ray and his brothers. He looked through the diner window without making it obvious he was looking, and Ray watched him absorb the information. Claire, the bag on her shoulder, the envelope in her hands, Lily standing beside her. Jim's jaw moved slightly. He walked toward Ray. Afternoon, he said. His voice had the particular studied neutrality of law enforcement. All the texture sanded off it. Understand there was a disturbance here. Afternoon, Ray said. I don't know about a disturbance. We stopped for coffee. I got a call that some men were harassing a local resident in this parking lot. Man came in hot about an hour early to pick up his wife, Ray said. We were in the lot. Nothing happened. Jim looked at him steadily. I'm going to need to speak with Claire Brennan. I think Claire's got a few minutes, Ray said. She might have a few things she'd like to say to a deputy herself, actually, including about some reports she filed, about injuries, reports that got handled by a family member of the man she was filing them against. Jim's expression didn't change, but something behind it did. The studied neutrality was being held in place now by visible effort, the same way a man holds a door closed when someone is pushing on the other side. That's a serious accusation, Jim said. Yes, Ray said, it is. And I want you to know, Deputy, that I have a contact at the state attorney's office who received a full briefing on those reports 40 minutes ago, including the case numbers, including the responding officer's name." He paused. Both times, Jim Pruitt stood very still. And behind Ray inside the diner, Tomas held his phone up slightly so the screen was visible through the glass. The call log showing a number with a 512 area code. Austin, state capital. Timestamp 42 minutes ago. Jim looked at the phone, then at Ray, and something in the careful architecture of his expression developed a crack that hadn't been there when he walked across the lot. "I'm just here to do a welfare check," he said. "Claire's welfare is excellent," Ray said, "getting better by the minute." The silence between them had the quality of two men who understand each other completely and have just finished the preliminary phase of something that isn't over. Jim knew it. Ray knew it. The difference was Ray didn't need it to be over today. He just needed today. "She's free to go wherever she wants," Jim said finally. "I know she is," Ray said. Jim held Ray's gaze for another 3 seconds, then turned, walked back to his cruiser, got in, and did not leave right away. Sat there, engine running, making sure everyone knew he was still there. Ray walked back into the diner without looking at the cruiser. Claire met his eyes the moment he came through the door, and he could see the question in her face. The fear, the fragile hope, the exhausting cycle of those two things trading places. "We're good," he said. "You ready?" Claire looked at Lily. Lily looked at her mother. "We're ready," Lily said. And somewhere in the parking lot, Jim Pruitt's cruiser was still idling, and Dennis Pruitt was somewhere with his phone and his anger and his sense of a world slipping beyond his grip. And the road to Beaumont was 143 miles of Route 41 in the late afternoon sun, and none of it was simple, and none of it was over. But Claire Brennan walked toward the diner door with her daughter's hand in hers, her bags on her shoulder, Carol's envelope in her pocket, and her chin up. And when she pushed through that door and the heat of the afternoon hit her face, she didn't flinch. She just kept walking. Jim Pruitt's cruiser pulled out of the diner parking lot exactly 40 seconds after Claire and Lily walked through the door. Ray counted. He had a habit of counting things that mattered, and whether Jim was leaving or repositioning mattered considerably. The cruiser turned left onto Route 41, which was the direction away from Beaumont, and also the direction toward the edge of town, where Dennis Pruitt's truck had disappeared an hour earlier. Ray filed that information and kept moving. The plan was 2 vehicles. Hector and Big Dave would ride escort on their bikes far enough back to not be obvious close enough to matter. Tomas had arranged a truck, a plain one borrowed from a man he knew in the next town over, who owed him a favor and hadn't asked a single question about why it was needed. The truck was already in the lot behind the diner, which was how Thomas operated. He had a way of solving the logistical problem before anyone else had finished identifying it. Claire and Lily were in the back seat. Ray was driving. He hadn't planned to drive. He'd planned to ride his bike and let Thomas take the wheel. But when they'd come out of the diner and Claire had looked at the borrowed truck and then at Ray with an expression that said without any words at all that she needed a face she recognized in the front seat, he'd taken the keys from Tomas without discussion. The first 10 minutes of the drive were quiet, not uncomfortable quiet, the particular quiet of people who have been through something together and are now on the other side of the hardest part, and the body's nervous system is slowly, cautiously beginning to believe that the immediate danger has passed. And the relief of that is so physical that speaking feels like more than anyone can manage yet. Lily was the one who broke it. "Are we being followed?" she asked. Ray checked the mirror. He'd been checking it every 30 seconds since they left the lot. "Not yet," he said, "not yet." Lily repeated, filing it. "You'll tell me if that changes." "I'll tell you." "Okay." She looked out the window. "Then how far is it?" "About 2.5 hours." "Is it nice where we're going?" Ray thought about his brother Marcus's place in Beaumont, the converted house on a corner lot, the paint job that was always slightly chipped, the garden in the side yard that one of the residents had started, and that had become a kind of ongoing collective project. The smell of whatever someone was cooking that drifted through the whole building in the evenings. It's good, he said. It's real. People there have been where you are, and they're further along now. Do kids stay there? Sometimes. Are there other kids there now? He thought about it honestly. I don't know for certain. I can find out. Lily nodded. She was looking out the window again, watching the world pass, and Ray could see her face in the rearview mirror. The bruised eye, the calculating stillness. And underneath it, moving slowly and carefully like something that had been underground for a long time and wasn't sure yet if it was safe to serve as something that looked like ordinary curiosity. The kind 8-year-olds have about the world. The kind that gets crushed by environments like the one she'd been living in and was apparently despite everything still alive in her. It felt important. He didn't say so. Claire had been looking at her hands in her lap since they left the diner. Ray had been aware of it in the peripheral way he was aware of everything. The silence coming from her was different from Lily's, heavier, more loaded, more turbulent, the kind of quiet that is doing heavy lifting. After about 20 minutes, she said, "He's going to come after us." "Yes," Ray said. He didn't soften it. He decided early that Claire Brennan had been managed and maneuvered by enough people that what she needed from him was the honest version. Jim will help him. Jim is going to have a harder time helping him than he did yesterday, Ray said. Tomas's contact at the state level is real. That call is on record. The moment Jim Pruitt makes an official move that looks like it's protecting Dennis, he's doing it with a spotlight on him that wasn't there before. And unofficially, Claire asked, a beat. Unofficially is harder to control, but we're not going to leave you without a plan for that. Claire was quiet for a moment. What's the plan for that? First step is the emergency protective order. Marcus has a legal advocate at his place, a woman named Sandra who does this full-time. She knows which judges move fast and which ones don't, and she knows how to frame the filing so it doesn't get lost in the system. That happens tomorrow morning. I tried a protective order before, Claire said, and her voice had the flat texture of something that has been a source of pain for a long time. The year before we got married, before I knew about Jim, the order came through and Dennis violated it inside of 3 days. And when I called it in, Jim was the responding officer and he told Dennis to sleep it off at a friend's place and nothing was filed. Sandra files in a different county, Ray said. Different jurisdiction. Jim Pruitt has no relationship with any of the judges there. Another silence, shorter this time. You've done this before, Claire said. Not just this. This isn't just something that happened today because Lily found you. We've helped people move through situations before, Ray said. It's not organized. It's not something with a name. It's just you spend enough years on the road, you see enough of the way things work and don't work, and you build up a map of who to call and what doors actually open. Bikers, Claire said. And the way she said it wasn't dismissive. It was genuinely ruminative, like she was turning the word over to look at what was actually under it. I never would have. She stopped. Most people don't, Ray said. In the rearview mirror, Lily was watching this exchange with the expression of someone attending to important information. Can I ask you something? Claire said. Yeah. The way you talked to Dennis in the parking lot, you weren't scared of him at all. No. He's hurt people before, not just us. Before me, there was a woman. I found out later, from before he moved here, Claire stopped, composed herself, restarted. She was in the hospital. Twice, the air in the truck went a specific kind of heavy. I know men like Dennis, Ray said carefully. I grew up knowing men like Dennis. My father was in some ways. He paused, navigating the territory, choosing what was useful. Men like that depend on a very specific kind of environment to keep working. They need isolation. They need the person they are hurting to believe no one will help. They need everyone around them to look the other way. You change one of those 3 things, the whole structure shakes. You change all 3. He checked the mirror. That's what today was. Claire absorbed that, then very quietly she said, I stopped believing anyone would help. I want you to know that. I'm not saying it as an excuse. I'm saying it because I want you to understand that when she told me what she'd done, who she'd talked to, I wasn't angry. I was terrified. Not because I thought it was wrong, because I'd stopped being able to imagine that it would work. The road stretched ahead of them. The afternoon light was long and warm, casting everything gold the way late Texas sun does, and the landscape was moving past at 65 miles an hour, and nobody spoke for a little while. Then Lily said from the back seat, with the careful precision of someone making an important announcement, "I didn't stop believing it would work." Claire made a sound, small, involuntary. "I just didn't know who," Lily continued. "I knew someone had to be able to help. I just had to find the right person. It took a while to find the right person." Ray tightened his hands on the wheel by a fraction. The rearview mirror showed him Lily's face, that careful, ancient-eyed 8-year-old face. And he thought about the 15 minutes she'd said she spent behind the diner before she came out, and the morning she'd spent waiting, and whatever calculations she'd run in her head in the days or weeks before that. The process of elimination that had moved through every available option until it arrived at a group of bikers who might come back through on a Tuesday. His phone buzzed on the seat beside him. Hector riding behind them. One word in the text, blue. Ray's eyes went to the mirror. The road mirror this time, not the interior one. Far back, just becoming visible around a curve they'd rounded 2 minutes ago, a vehicle. Dark blue. Moving faster than the speed limit. Ford pickup. One taillight out. "Hector," Ray said, and his voice was even. Claire turned in her seat before he could say anything else. She saw the truck in the mirror, and her breath went in sharp and hard. The involuntary gasp of a body recognizing a threat before the mind has fully processed it. "That's him," she said. "I see him. How did he—" She shook her head, the question dissolving before she could finish it. Of course he'd known. He always knew. He'd taken her phone this morning, but there were other ways. There were always other ways. Maybe someone had seen them leave. Maybe Jim had called ahead. Maybe Dennis had driven a loop and come back and spotted them on the highway before they'd spotted him. "Mom," Lily's voice was completely steady. Claire turned to her daughter. "Don't look at the mirror," Lily said. "Look at Ray." Claire turned to the front. "Good," Ray said. He was already on the phone. "Hector, he's behind us. How far back is Dave?" "Half mile," Hector said through the speaker. "I'm going to drop back and sit between you. Dave can come up." "Do it, and call Tomas." "Already on it." Ray kept his speed exactly where it was. Not faster. The specific and critical decision not to run, because running confirmed something to Dennis. Confirmed that they were afraid. Confirmed that they were trying to escape. Gave him a narrative in his own head where he was in pursuit of something that belonged to him. Running also put them on open highway at speed with a man who'd been drinking for 7 hours, and that math didn't work. "He's going to try to pass Hector," Ray said, thinking out loud, feeding information. "Or he's going to try to get beside us. When he does, what do we do?" Claire's voice was controlled but tight. "Nothing," Ray said. "That's exactly what you do. Nothing. He's going to want a reaction. He's going to want to see you panic. He's built 4 years on the fact that panic is available. Don't give it to him." The blue truck was closing distance. Hector had dropped back between them, riding at an angle that made passing more difficult, buying the truck time and space. But Dennis wasn't patient. Not today. Not on what he'd been drinking. The blue truck surged left, trying to get around Hector on the shoulder. Hector moved his bike fractionally. Dennis corrected, nearly drifting onto the gravel, overcorrected. The truck fishtailed, slightly recovered. Claire gripped the door handle. "Eyes front," Ray said. "Oh." She put her eyes front. "Lily, you okay?" he said. "Yes," Lily said from the back. Her voice was the steadiest thing in the vehicle. Dennis's truck was alongside Hector now. Horn going, long aggressive blast. The horn of a man in a blind rage who has used the fact of his anger as a weapon for so long that he no longer distinguishes between the anger and the intention. Hector held his line. He didn't swerve, didn't speed up, didn't brake. He simply maintained his exact position with the maddening, immovable calm of a man who has decided on a course and is not available to be moved by noise. Then Dennis's truck cleared Hector and came up alongside Ray's truck. Ray felt Claire go absolutely rigid in the passenger seat. Without touching her, he could feel it. Dennis's window was down. He was screaming something. Ray could see his mouth moving the cords in his neck, the face of a man entirely overtaken by the specific and terrible engine of himself. Whatever he was saying was lost in road noise and motion, but the intent was clear, and it wasn't new, and it wasn't complicated. Keep your eyes front, Ray said to Claire one more time. Not as a command, as something else. He can't see your face from that angle. Don't show him your face. She understood immediately, understood that showing Dennis her fear was a transaction, was giving him something real, was feeding the machine. She kept her eyes on the road ahead. Dennis's truck jerked toward them. A warning, the automotive equivalent of a raised fist. The vehicle extension of the same gesture he'd been making for 4 years in rooms with no witnesses. Ray did not flinch, did not brake, did not swerve. He drove 65 miles an hour, straight line, both hands on the wheel, exactly as if the blue truck beside him were not there. Behind them, Big Dave's bike had come up, and the sound of Dave's engine joining Hector's created a combined presence that Dennis could hear even over his own horn, even through his own rage. The sound of more weight than he'd accounted for. More bodies, more machines, more of the specific and patient stubbornness of people who have done the math and aren't leaving. Dennis's truck dropped back. Not gone, but back. He's dropping back, Ray said. Claire exhaled a breath that sounded like she'd been holding it for roughly 4 years. Is he stopping? She managed. No, but he can't pass with Dave there. He's going to have to make a decision. The decision came in the form of the blue truck pulling onto the shoulder and stopping. Ray watched it in the mirror. Dennis's truck motionless on the highway shoulder, getting smaller as the distance grew. Not chasing, not moving, just stopped. The way a man stops when he runs out of road. When the bluster and the noise and the forward aggression reaches the edge of the territory it controls and can't go further. He stopped, Claire said. She turned to look despite herself. Don't count on it lasting, Ray said. But his voice had a different quality now. The careful steadiness was still there, but underneath it, something had shifted. The specific relief of a man whose plan has so far worked. Hector's voice came through the speaker. Dave's going to hang back and watch him. Make sure he doesn't get moving again. Tell Dave 20 minutes, Ray said. Just 20 minutes, then come on. 20 miles down the road, when the blue truck had been invisible in the mirrors for a long time, and the highway had settled back into its own rhythm, Lily said, Ray? Yeah, I need to ask you something. Go ahead. When we get to your brother's place. She stopped, started differently. Are you going to leave right away? He was quiet for a moment, an honest moment. I'm going to stay tonight, he said. Make sure you're in and settled. Make sure the first conversation with Sandra happens and the paperwork gets started. And then, he paused, and then I've got road Lily. That's the honest answer. I know, she said. I'm not asking you to stay forever. I just needed to know about tonight. Tonight, he confirmed. That's a guarantee. She seemed to settle with that. Claire had been listening to this exchange with her face turned slightly toward the window, and Ray could see her reflection. The wetness of her eyes, the tight set of her jaw, the expression of a woman experiencing something she doesn't quite have the vocabulary for yet because it's too unfamiliar. Someone making good on a promise. Someone staying long enough to mean it. Your brother, Claire said. Marcus? Does he know we're coming? He's known since Hector called him from the diner parking lot, Ray said. He's got rooms ready. He's got food going. That's just how Marcus is. He starts cooking when he knows that people are coming. By the time we get there, the whole place is going to smell like something that makes you feel like you're supposed to be there. Claire pressed her lips together. I don't know how to. She stopped. Tried again. I don't have words for what. You don't need words, Ray said. Not today. She nodded and went quiet, and the truck moved through the late afternoon, and the road was open ahead of them, and nobody followed. For 11 minutes, Hector's text came through. Blue truck moving again. Different direction. Not highway. Ray read it and didn't say anything immediately, processed it. A different direction. Not the highway meant not following them directly, which meant Dennis had made a new calculation. A man in Dennis Pruitt's situation who has just been outrun and outmaneuvered on a public highway by a group of people who have demonstrated that they are not going away has a limited set of options. He could drink himself into a stupor and rage about it. He could call Jim Pruitt and try to escalate through official channels, which Tomas had made considerably more complicated. Or he could think about what else he controlled. What else he controlled? The house. Claire and Lily's things were still in the house. Clothes, documents, birth certificates, social security cards, Lily's school records. Things that couldn't be replaced quickly and that Dennis, if he got there first, could use as leverage, could destroy, could use to complicate every step of the legal process that was going to start tomorrow morning. Ray called Tomas. He turned around, Ray said. I know, Tomas said. I'm already on it. I've got someone who can be at the house in 12 minutes. Who? A friend of a friend, local, solid. He's going to document everything on the property before Dennis can get back and change it. Tomas. I know Ray. I've already called Sandra in Beaumont too. She knows to flag the documentation issue in the filing. A spouse removing or destroying property during a separation attempt goes into the record. Ray exhaled. What would I do without you? Considerably less paperwork, Tomas said and hung up. Ray looked at the road, then he said, Claire. I heard, she said. Her voice was tight again. New tension threading through the exhausted relief that had been there a moment ago. He's going to the house. Someone is going to the house first. To document everything. Your thing. Lily's things. We're going to have a record. He'll destroy them anyway, Claire said. Then the record shows he destroyed them, Ray said. That becomes part of what Sandra files. Every action he takes from this point forward is being documented. He's used to operating in the dark. Every light we turn on is a problem for him. Claire pressed both hands flat on her thighs. A grounding gesture, staying present, staying here, not going to the house in her head where Dennis was doing whatever Dennis was doing. My mom's picture, she said suddenly. What? There's a photograph in the bedroom, in the nightstand. It's the only picture I have of my mom. Her voice had fractured slightly on the word mom. Not broken, fractured, a hairline crack in the controlled surface. She died when I was 19. It's all I have. The truck was quiet. Then Lily said from the back seat with a certainty that left no room for anything else. He's not going to destroy it, Mom. Lily, you don't know. He doesn't know what's important, Lily said. He doesn't pay attention to what's important to you unless you tell him. You never told him about the picture. You were smart. You never let him know what mattered most. Claire turned to look at her daughter. The silence between them was the kind that belongs only to mothers and daughters, to people who have been in the same foxhole for years and know each other's vulnerabilities and strengths with a precision that no outsider can fully access. You're right, Claire said softly. I know I am. Iposifela said, without arrogance, just fact. Ray's phone lit up again. This time it wasn't Hector or Tomas. It was a number he didn't recognize. He almost let it go. Would have under different circumstances. But something made him answer. Mitchell, he said, a beat of silence on the other end, then a woman's voice low and careful. Are you with Claire Brennan? Ray's hand tightened on the phone. Who is this? My name is Angela Reeves. I'm Dennis Pruitt's ex-wife. Another beat. the one before Claire. The truck felt very still, suddenly, despite the 65 miles an hour. How did you get this number? Ray said. I've been watching Dennis for 3 years, Angela said. I have a friend who saw what happened at Dottie's today and called me. I've been trying to get someone to listen about Dennis for 3 years, and I didn't know how. Her voice cracked slightly, controlled itself. I heard there was someone finally doing something, and I needed to. I have documentation. Medical records from the ER, dated photographs, statements I gave that were never properly filed, and something else. What else? Emails, she said, between Dennis and Jim Pruitt from 2 years ago, right around the time Claire filed her second report. Jim telling Dennis exactly what to say, coaching him on the exact language to use when they interviewed Claire. A pause. I got them from Jim's account. Don't ask me how. Ray was very still. Angela, he said, I need you to do one thing right now. What? Call this number. He recited Tomas's number from memory. Tell him everything you just told me in exactly this much detail. His name is Tomas. He'll know what to do with what you have. You believe me, she said, not a question. The particular, slightly stunned quality of someone who has been disbelieved for so long, that belief itself has become surprising. Yes, Ray said, I believe you. He heard her exhale. Okay, she said. Okay, I'm calling. She hung up. Claire was looking at him. She had heard enough of the one-sided conversation to have assembled the shape of it, and the shape of it was doing something complicated to her expression. Layers of emotion moving across her face too fast to fully name, because what Angela Reeves had just described was the confirmation of something Claire had always known, but had never been able to prove. Had felt in her body for years and been told was paranoia, was sensitivity, was the unreliability of her own perception. She hadn't been wrong. She had never been wrong. That was his ex-wife, Claire said. It wasn't a question. Yes. She has proof about Jim. She has emails between Dennis and Jim about your second report, Ray said. If they are what she says they are, every official action Jim takes from this point is compromised. He knows it. The moment Tomas's contact sees those emails, Jim Pruitt becomes a problem for his department, not a resource for Dennis. Claire pressed her hand over her mouth, not crying, controlling the urge to which was its own kind of strength. 3 years, she said through her hand. She's been carrying that for 3 years. You've been carrying yours for 4, Ray said, and Lily has been carrying hers. He let that sit then. You're not alone in this. That's the thing. He needed you to believe you were alone, that no one would help, that no one had seen what you'd seen or felt what you'd felt. He paused. It was never true. It's less true right now than it has ever been. Claire took her hand from her mouth, straightened, looked at the road ahead of them. Lily's hand came over the back of the seat and rested on her mother's shoulder. Just rested there. Light and certain and present. Claire covered it with her own hand. And the truck kept moving down Route 41 toward Beaumont, toward Marcus and his cooking and Sandra's paperwork and the specific and imperfect and absolutely real possibility of something different. While behind them, Big Dave's bike finally came into view in the mirror, catching up. The sound of it reaching them a second later through the windows, like a confirmation, like a closing of a circle, like the sound of people who said they'd be there and were. Marcus Mitchell was not a large man. That was the first thing Claire noticed when they pulled up and he came out to meet them. Ray's brother was half a head shorter, slight through the shoulders, with reading glasses pushed up on his forehead and flour on his hands from whatever he'd been doing in the kitchen. And when he saw the truck, he came down the porch steps the way people come toward things they've been expecting and have been genuinely worried about. Not rushing, moving with purpose. He looked at Ray first. Something passed between them. Brother's language. The shorthand of people who have known each other's faces since childhood. And then Marcus looked at Claire and then at Lily, and the expression he settled into was not pity, and was not professional warmth, and was not the managed gentleness of someone performing compassion. It was simply the face of a man who has been in this work long enough that what he feels when a mother and daughter arrive at his door is personal, always personal. "You made good time," he said to Ray. "Decent roads," Ray said. Marcus nodded. Then he looked at Lily and crouched down, not all the way to her level, but enough, and said, "My name's Marcus. You must be the one who started all this." Lily looked at him. "I hired Ray," she said. "I heard." Marcus almost smiled. "Good hire." Lily considered him for a moment with those dark, assessing eyes, and whatever she found in his face apparently satisfied the assessment because she gave him one of her single, decisive nods, and that was the end of the formal introduction. Inside, the house smelled exactly the way Ray had said it would. Claire walked through the front door and the smell hit her. Something with onions and garlic. Something simmering low and slow. Something that had been on the stove for hours specifically because people were coming and people arriving somewhere need to feel immediately that the place was expecting them, that a space was held. She stopped just inside the door. "You okay?" Ray said behind her. "It smells like—" She stopped, put her hand on the door frame. "My grandmother used to cook like that, low and slow, Sunday afternoons." She pulled herself forward. "Sorry, I'm fine." She wasn't fine exactly, but she was something that fine might eventually grow out of, and that was enough for right now. Sandra Reyes was in the kitchen, and she was exactly what her name had suggested in the abstract, and nothing like what any abstraction could have prepared you for in person. She was in her 50s, compact, with the straight-back posture of someone who has spent decades in rooms where she needed to project authority to be heard, and the eyes of someone who has heard every version of every story and has not become numb to any of them. She was on her phone when they came in, and she held up one finger, not dismissively, with authority, finished her sentence, said, "I'll call you back," and put the phone in her pocket. "Claire," she said, not a question. She crossed the kitchen and shook Claire's hand with both of hers. A full grip, not the limp condolence handshake of someone who doesn't know what to do with another person's crisis. "I've already started looking at your case. Thomas sent me the outline on the drive down. We're going to talk tonight, not a long talk, just enough so I know everything I need for the morning filing. But first, have you eaten anything today?" Claire opened her mouth and closed it. "That's what I thought," Sandra said. She looked at Lily. "You either, I'm guessing." "I had half a granola bar at like 11, Lily said. "Half a granola bar," Sandra repeated with the tone of someone making a note in a mental file labeled, "Things that are going to change." "Sit down, both of you." It was not a suggestion. It was the gentle and absolute authority of a woman who has decided that the people in front of her are going to be taken care of and is simply executing that decision. Claire sat down. Lily sat down beside her. And something in the act of being told to sit in the uncomplicated directness of it, in the absence of any manipulation or agenda behind the instruction, made Claire's eyes go bright again, with that particular brightness she kept having to control. Ray stood in the doorway between the kitchen and the hall. He watched Marcus move around the stove with the practiced efficiency of long habit. Watched Sandra setting bowls without asking where they were. Watched Claire's shoulders drop by approximately 1 inch from where they had been since the diner parking lot. His phone buzzed. Tomas. He stepped into the hall. "Angela's documents are real," Tomas said without preamble. "I had my contact look at the emails within 20 minutes of her calling me. They're authentic. Dennis and Jim coordinated on both reports. Jim told Dennis word for word how to characterize Claire's behavior to make her sound unstable. There are 7 emails over a 6-week period." A pause. "My contact is escalating tonight, not tomorrow, tonight. Jim Pruitt is going to get a call before he goes to sleep." Ray leaned against the wall. "And Dennis?" "Dennis went to the house. Our guy documented everything before he got there, photos and video. Dennis broke 3 things. We have it on record. There's also something else." Tomas's voice shifted slightly into the register he used when something had surprised even him. "Our guy found something in the house when he was documenting. In the garage. Tools Ray. the kind you use on brake lines, and in the storage cabinet, a folder. Medical bills in Claire's name from 2 years ago, injuries she was treated for. Dennis kept them. He kept a file. The hallway was very quiet. He kept a file on what he did to her, Ray said. Journals too, Thomas said. Handwritten, dates, what he did, where he hit her, how she reacted, written like he was conducting research. Ray closed his eyes for exactly 2 seconds. The medical bills create a paper trail he apparently thought he controlled, Tomas continued. Maybe he kept them to have leverage over her. Maybe he's just the kind of man who keeps trophies. Either way, Sandra's going to want them. Thomas paused. Angela's hospital records from 4 years ago mirror Claire's almost exactly. Pattern of injury, pattern of explanation. Sandra can use both in the filing. This isn't just a local protective order anymore, Ray. With those emails and the documented pattern across 2 victims, this goes significantly higher than family court. Ray's hand tightened on the phone. Angela, he said, she's safe. She's in Corpus Christi, different county. She's been out for 3 years, but she's been scared. Tomas's voice was even. She said when I told her the emails were being taken seriously, she started crying and couldn't stop for about 10 minutes. She said she'd been waiting for someone to believe her. Make sure she has Sandra's number. Already done. Ray hung up and stood in the hallway for a moment. He could hear Marcus and Sandra and Claire and Lily in the kitchen. The sounds of food being served, of a spoon against a bowl, of Lily asking Marcus what was in the stew, and Marcus telling her with genuine enthusiasm, as if the question were the best one he'd been asked all week. Of Claire's voice low, responding to something Sandra said, starting to give information in the careful and slightly halting way someone gives information when they have been trained by experience to be cautious about who they give it to and are consciously overriding that training. He walked back into the kitchen. Marcus looked at him over Claire's head. The brother look, the what's the news look. Ray gave him a small nod, the kind that meant more than we expected, the kind that meant it's going to be okay in ways we can actually defend now. Marcus turned back to the stove. Sandra had a legal pad out, and she and Claire were talking, the conversation building its own momentum, and Ray noticed that Sandra had a specific way of asking questions that didn't feel like interrogation. She asked things in a way that made the answer feel like the logical next step in a conversation rather than information being extracted. Claire was talking more freely with every exchange. The guardedness was still there, would be for a long time, but the voice behind it was getting steadier. Lily was eating, deliberately, methodically, with the focus of someone who is very hungry and has decided that this food is safe to eat and is doing so without apology. She had her spoon in one hand and her other hand flat on the table beside the bowl, and when Marcus set a piece of cornbread next to her without asking, she looked at it for a moment, then at Marcus, then picked it up and ate it. It was such a small and ordinary thing. Cornbread, a child eating cornbread at a kitchen table. Ray had to look away. He found himself at the back door, and he went through it and stood outside in the dark, and the night air was warm and still and smelled like cut grass and distance and the particular open quality of Texas nights that he had known his whole life and that had been, on the worst days of his life, the only thing that felt unconditional. He heard the door behind him. He didn't turn around. He already knew from the weight of the footsteps. Lily came and stood beside him, not asking anything, just stood there the way she'd done everything today, with intention, with that quality of presence that was too old for her face and too necessary for anyone to wish away. You can't sleep, Ray said. Not yet. She was quiet for a moment. Mom's still talking to Sandra. Sandra's going to stay for a while, I think. Mom has a lot to say. Another pause. She's never had someone ask her to say it before. Not someone who was actually going to do something with it. No, Ray said. I don't imagine she has. Is it going to work? Lily asked. The legal stuff, is it actually going to stop him? He thought about the easy answer. He thought about what she'd earned by being honest with him all day, by not dressing anything in softness when the truth was what was needed. The legal process is going to create real consequences for him, he said, consequences that follow him, that make what he does next cost him in ways that aren't there right now. He paused. That's not the same as a guarantee. I want to be honest with you. She nodded slowly. But it's different from before. Yes, significantly different from before. Because of Angela. Because of Angela, and because of Tomas, and because of Sandra, and because of Carol, and because of Renee, and because of Marcus, he paused. And because of you. You're the one who made all of those people connect to each other. You're the one who found the first piece. Lily absorbed this, stared out at the dark. I keep thinking about what would have happened, she said, if I hadn't come out, if I'd stood behind the diner for 16 minutes instead of 15, and you'd all gone inside and I'd missed you. Her voice didn't waver, but something in it was very careful. I've thought about it 3 times since we left the diner. She paused, and I'm trying to stop thinking about it because it didn't happen that way. What happened? He said. Happened. 15 minutes is, she said more to herself than to him. I almost didn't. But you did, Ray said. That's the only part that counts. She was quiet for a while. The night moved around them easy and without urgency. Then she reached into the pocket of her jeans and pulled out the crumpled bills and the quarters and the dime. She'd had it in that pocket and all day, through the diner and the truck and the highway and Dennis's truck and the mirror and all of it. She held it out to him, the $14.35. He looked at it. We had a deal, she said. You said you'd give back the dollar when it was done. He reached into his vest pocket and found the single folded dollar bill he'd put there in a diner parking lot that felt like 3 lifetimes ago. He held it out. She took it, added it to the rest, pressed the whole $15 into a slightly more organized shape, and put it back in her pocket. It's not done, she said. I know that, but the part you could do is done. Yeah, he said, the part I could do. What comes next? She stopped. That's ours, mine and Mom's. That's right. We're going to be okay, she said, and it wasn't a question. Wasn't something she was asking him to confirm. It was a statement being road-tested, being said out loud for the first time to see how it held up under its own weight. She said it again slightly differently. We're going to be okay. It held up. The back door opened again, and this time it was Claire. She came out and stopped when she saw them standing there. Ray and her daughter side by side in the dark. And something about the image did something to her face that she didn't try to control this time, didn't manage or contain. Sandra wants to wrap up for tonight, she said. She's coming back at 8 in the morning. She looked at Ray. Tomas called her while we were talking. He told her about Angela's emails. I know, Ray said. She said. Claire stopped. She pressed her hand briefly over her eyes, a gesture of composure, then dropped it. She said this case is going to outlast Dennis Pruitt's ability to hide. She paused. Those were her exact words. She said by the time she's done filing, he's not going to have a quiet place left to stand. Her voice had cracked on the last sentence, and she let it crack, didn't chase it down and smooth it over. She also told me about Jim Pruitt getting a call tonight from the state level. Yes, he's going to know, Claire said. He's going to know it fell apart. Yes, she nodded, pressed her lips together, nodded again. Good hand, she said, and the word was quiet and fierce and entirely her own. The 3 of them stood in the dark for a moment, the grizzled biker with his dollar back in his pocket, the woman who had been holding on for 4 years by whatever was available and had finally been handed something solid, and the 8-year-old who had done the math and chosen to walk toward a stranger rather than stay in a life that was doing its best to convince her there was no door. You should get some sleep, Ray said to Lily. She looked at him. You'll still be here in the morning. Said I would. You said tonight. Tonight and morning, as he said. Sandra's at 8. I want to hear how it goes. The corner of Lily's mouth moved. The almost smile she'd been practicing all day. The one that hadn't fully committed yet. Had been waiting for something to commit to. It committed. Full and real and 8 years old and entirely her own. She went inside. Claire stood with Ray for another moment. The night was still doing what it did, warm and wide and unhurried. I don't know how to say thank you for something this size, she said. You don't have to, he said. I need to try anyway. She looked at him steadily. You didn't have to stop. You didn't have to stay. You didn't have to call Tomas or drive us to Beaumont or stand in a parking lot in front of Dennis or any of it. She paused. You came in for coffee. Her voice was even, and behind the evenness was the full weight of everything she was choosing not to dramatize because the weight spoke for itself. What you did today, I'm going to spend a long time understanding the size of it. I don't think I can see all of it yet. You did the hard part, Ray said. You walked out that diner door. Lily made me. Lily showed you the door, he said. You walked through it. Claire was quiet for a moment. Then she said, she's going to be something when she grows up. She already is, Ray said, and he meant it without qualification or softness. Claire went inside. Ray stayed out a few minutes longer. He thought about the road. Route 41 and the miles behind him and the miles ahead. The particular and reliable emptiness of highway in the early morning when everything is possible, because nothing has been decided yet. He thought about the single dollar in his vest pocket that wasn't there anymore, because a child had taken it back as evidence of a completed transaction. He thought about Lily's almost smile finally finishing itself. He thought about Dennis Pruitt getting a call in the night from someone above Jim Pruitt's pay grade, and the specific and clarifying terror of a man who has operated in comfortable darkness, discovering that the lights have been on longer than he knew. He thought about Angela Reeves in Corpus Christi crying on the phone for 10 minutes because someone had finally believed her. Then he went inside because the night was full and the morning was at 8, and Sandra was coming back, and there was still work to do, and Ray Mitchell had never been the kind of man who went anywhere before the work was finished. In a room down the hall, Lily fell asleep before Claire came in to check on her. She was curled on her side with her hand tucked under her cheek, the left sneaker with the dead lights sitting on the floor beside the bed, where she'd kicked it off the right one beside it, still carrying its single blinking function into the dark. $15 had bought her everything, not because money had power, because she'd had the specific and extraordinary courage to walk across a gravel parking lot and hand it to the right person at the right moment, and because that person had been exactly the kind of man who, when a child looks up at him with a bruised face and says, I need to hire you, finds it completely impossible to walk away. He hadn't taken her money, but she'd paid him anyway in the only currency that had ever actually mattered between them. She trusted him, and he had not for a single moment let that trust fall. That was the whole story. That was all of it. A little girl who refused to stop believing that someone would help, and a man who turned out to be the kind of person who proved her right. The morning came in gold through the windows of Marcus's house, the kind of Texas morning that arrives without subtlety, all heat and light from the first moment. And by 7:30, the kitchen smelled like coffee and something baking that Ray couldn't identify, but that made the whole house feel like a place people had been living in for years. Marcus was already up, had probably been up since 6, and when Ray came into the kitchen, his brother handed him a mug without asking if he wanted one. She sleep, Marcus asked. Lily or Claire? Both. Lily slept through. Claire I heard moving around about 4, then quiet again by 5. Marcus nodded, not surprised, just cataloging. Sandra's on her way. She texted 20 minutes ago. Said she's got the emergency filing ready and she wants to go over it with Claire before they head to the courthouse. What time's the filing? 9:15. Judge Kellerman. Sandra says she's good. Good how? Good as in she doesn't tolerate games. Good as in if Dennis tries to contest this without cause, she'll hand him his head. Ray drank his coffee and thought about judges who didn't tolerate games and what that meant for a man like Dennis Pruitt, who had spent 4 years playing a very specific game with very high stakes. Claire came into the kitchen at 7:45, and she looked like someone who had slept 3 hours in pieces and spent the rest of the time staring at the ceiling doing math. But her eyes were clear, and when Sandra arrived 15 minutes later, with a leather bag full of documents and a laptop under her arm, Claire sat down at the kitchen table with the focused attention of someone who understands that the next 2 hours are going to determine the architecture of the next 2 years. Sandra spread the documents out like a general planning a campaign. "Here's what we're filing," she said. "Emergency protective order. Full no contact. Dennis is prohibited from being within 500 feet of you or Lily, from contacting you by any means, from contacting anyone on your behalf, from going anywhere he knows you frequent." She slid a document across the table. "Violation of any part of this is immediate grounds for arrest. No warnings, no second chances." Claire's hand moved to the paper but didn't touch it. Like touching it would make it real, and she wasn't sure yet if she was allowed to believe it was real. "How long does it last?" 2 years initially, renewable, but that's just the protective order. We're also filing for divorce with an emergency custody order, full legal and physical custody to you. Dennis gets supervised visitation only, and only if a family court judge determines it's in Lily's best interest, which, given the medical documentation and Angela's testimony and the emails. Sandra stopped herself. Started differently. He's not getting unsupervised access to that child, not in this lifetime. Something moved through Claire's expression. Something large and complicated and fragile. What if he fights it? Then he fights it in front of Judge Kellerman with a state investigation into his cousin's conduct, sitting in the background, and a documented pattern of abuse across 2 victims and journals he kept in his garage that make him look like he was conducting a science experiment on how much pain a human being can take before they break. Sandra's voice had an edge to it now. Not anger exactly, something colder, more surgical. "Let him fight it. I want him to fight it. Every move he makes from here forward goes on record, and every record makes the case stronger." She looked at Claire directly. "This isn't a fair fight anymore, Claire. It stopped being a fair fight the moment you walked out of that diner. Now it's just a fight, and I'm very good at fights." Claire pressed her hand flat on the table, a grounding gesture, staying present. "When will he know?" "He'll be served this morning, probably around 10. A process server is going to show up wherever he is and hand him the paperwork, and from that moment forward, the clock is ticking. He's going to lose his mind." "Probably," Sandra said, "which is why I've already coordinated with the Beaumont PD. They're aware of the filing. They're aware of the history. They're aware that Dennis Pruitt is a high-probability risk for violation. If he shows up here, if he shows up anywhere near you, they'll be here in under 3 minutes." She paused. "And Ray's not going anywhere until we're sure you're safe." Ray, leaning against the counter with his coffee, said, "That's right." Claire looked at him, then at Sandra, then at the documents on the table. "This is really happening," she said, not a question, more like she was testing the weight of the sentence to see if it would hold. "This is really happening," Sandra confirmed. Claire picked up the protective order, read it, her eyes moving over the language with the focused precision of someone who has been waiting for years to read exactly these words and is now afraid she's going to find a loophole she missed. She didn't find one. She set the paper down and looked at Sandra. "Thank you," she said, and the words came out rougher than she probably intended, the product of too much emotion being pushed through too narrow a channel. "Don't thank me yet," Sandra said. "Thank me when he's sitting in a cell for violating this thing. Thank me when you're in your own apartment with your daughter and you haven't looked over your shoulder in 6 months." She started gathering the documents back into organized piles. "Right now we just file. Then we see what he does. Then we respond. Lily appeared in the doorway, hair messed from sleep, still wearing the clothes from yesterday, one sock on, one sock off. Mom, Claire turned. Hey, baby, are you leaving? Just for a couple hours. Sandra and I have to go to the courthouse. Ray's staying here with you. Lily looked at Ray. Ray nodded. Okay, Lily said. She came into the kitchen, climbed onto the chair next to her mother, looked at the documents on the table with the same assessing expression she brought to everything. Is that the thing that makes him stay away? Yes, Sandra said. Lily studied it for a moment. Then she looked at Sandra. What happens if he doesn't stay away? Then he goes to jail, Sandra said. Simply, directly. The way you talk to a child who has earned the truth. Lily nodded once, filed it. Good, she said. They left at 8:30, Claire in the passenger seat of Sandra's car, the documents in a folder on her lap, her hands resting on top of it like she was keeping it from floating away. Ray watched them pull out of the driveway and then went back inside where Lily was sitting at the kitchen table with a piece of toast Marcus had made her and a glass of orange juice she was drinking very slowly. You want to go outside? Ray asked. There's a garden out back. Marcus says one of the residents planted it last spring. Lily looked at him. Will you come with me? Yeah. They went out the back door together. The garden was small but well-tended, rows of vegetables starting to come up, tomato plants staked, and tied a border of marigolds that someone had planted to keep the bugs away. Lily walked between the rows carefully, not touching anything, just looking. My mom used to have a garden, she said. Before Dennis, she grew tomatoes and peppers and these little squash things that were yellow. What happened to it? He said it took too much time, that she should be doing other things, so she stopped. She crouched down next to one of the tomato plants and looked at it closely. I think she'd like to have a garden again, she said, when we have our own place. I think she would too, Ray said. They stayed out there for almost an hour, Lily asking questions about the plants, Ray answering what he knew and making up what he didn't in the way you do with kids, when the truth matters less than the conversation. When they came back inside, Marcus had cleaned the kitchen and was sitting at the table with his own coffee, reading something on his phone. They should be done soon, he said without looking up. Court filings don't usually take this long, but Sandra's thorough. She strikes me as someone who's thorough about everything, Ray said. She is. It's why she's so good at what she does. Marcus looked up at Lily. You hungry for lunch? I was thinking about making grilled cheese. Lily considered this. What kind of cheese? Cheddar. Okay. She said it with the same seriousness. She said everything like the choice of cheese was a contract she was entering into. And Marcus smiled in a way that suggested he understood exactly what kind of child he was dealing with. They were halfway through lunch when Sandra's car pulled back into the driveway. Claire came in first. Her face was different. Not lighter exactly, but less weighted. Like she'd been carrying something for so long that she'd forgotten what it felt like to set it down, and the absence of it was still registering as a physical sensation. It's filed, she said. Judge Kellerman signed it. The protective order is active immediately. Sandra came in behind her, already on her phone, already moving to the next thing. Process server just texted. Dennis is at home. He'll have the papers in about 20 minutes. She looked at Ray. Beaumont PD is looped in. I gave them this address. They know to respond immediately if there's any indication he's headed this way. You think he will? Ray asked. I think he's going to do something, Sandra said. The question is what and how stupid. Claire sat down at the table next to Lily, put her hand on her daughter's shoulder. Lily put her hand on top of her mother's. They sat like that for a while, not talking, just being present to each other in the way that people are when they've just crossed a threshold they weren't sure they'd make it across. Ray's phone buzzed. Tomas. Jim Pruitt just got the call. State investigator. They're opening a formal inquiry into his handling of domestic violence reports. He's suspended pending the outcome. Ray texted back, how's he taking it, Tomas? Not well. Word is he's making calls, trying to line up support, finding out how many people are willing to go on record defending a deputy who coached his cousin on how to gaslight an abuse victim. Ray and Toma. Not many. Ray put his phone away and looked at Claire. Jim Pruitt just found out he's being investigated. He's suspended. Claire closed her eyes, opened them. Good. Lily was very quiet, processing all of it in that careful, methodical way she had. Then she said, "So Dennis doesn't have Jim to help him anymore?" "No," Ray said. "He doesn't." "What does he have?" It was a tactical question, the kind a general asks before a battle. Ray looked at this 8-year-old who had walked into a parking lot with $15 and decided that today was the day things changed, and he answered her the way she'd earned being answered. "He's got anger," Ray said, "and he's got whatever he thinks he's entitled to. And he's got the fact that for 4 years he's operated on the assumption that nobody would stop him. That's what he's got." "But those aren't real things," Lily said. "Those are just things he thinks." "That's right. And we have real things." "Yes," Lily nodded, satisfied with the math. 23 minutes after Sandra's text about the process server, Ray's phone rang. "Big Dave," Ray answered. "Yeah. Blue truck just left Dennis's house. Moving fast, not toward Beaumont, toward town. Looks like he's heading for Jim's place. Alone. Far as I can tell. Stay on him. Already am." Ray hung up and relayed the information. Sandra's eyes sharpened. He's going to try to get Jim to do something. Even suspended Jim still has friends in the department. Dennis is going to try to leverage that. "Will it work?" Claire asked. "No," Sandra said, "because Jim Pruitt is currently sitting in his house trying to figure out how to keep his pension and his freedom. He's not going to risk either one for Dennis. Not now." Her phone buzzed. She looked at it. "Process server confirms delivery." Dennis took the papers, read the first page, and threw them at him. Another buzz. "And now Dennis is calling me." She looked at Claire. "Do you want me to answer it? Can you record it?" "Already am. Everything he says from this point forward is evidence." Sandra answered on speaker. "Put it on the table where everyone could hear." "This is Sandra Reyes. You have no right." Dennis's voice was tight, strangled, the voice of a man whose world has just rearranged itself in ways he can't control. "That's my wife. That's my daughter. You can't just—" "Mr. Pruitt," Sandra said, and her voice was professional ice. "I'm recording this call. Anything you say can and will be used in court. If you have questions about the protective order, you should direct them to your attorney. I don't need a lawyer for this. This is bullshit. She's lying. Whatever she told you, she's lying. Mr. Pruitt, I want to talk to her. I want to talk to Claire. You tell her I know where—" Sandra's expression didn't change, but Ray saw her hand tighten on the phone. "Are you threatening her, Mr. Pruitt?" Silence on the other end, the kind of silence that comes when someone realizes they've just said something they can't unsay. "I'm not threatening anybody. I'm just saying, because threatening a protected party is a criminal offense. And you're currently on a recorded line with an attorney who specializes in exactly this kind of case. So I'm going to ask you one more time. Are you threatening Claire Brennan?" "No." "Good. Then we're done here. Any further contact should go through your attorney. Do you understand silence? Mr. Pruitt, do you understand yes?" Sandra hung up, looked at Claire. "He just gave us a recording of him implying a threat against you within an hour of being served with a protective order. If he violates, if he so much as drives past this house, he's not just getting arrested, he's getting charged with everything I can stack." Claire was shaking, not with fear, with something else, something that had been held down for so long that its release was almost violent. "He sounded scared," she said. "He should be," Sandra said. "He spent 4 years thinking he's untouchable. He just found out he's not." The afternoon passed in a kind of suspended tension, like waiting for weather. Ray stayed at the house. Marcus made dinner. Lily helped him standing on a chair to reach the counter, measuring ingredients with the same precision she brought to everything. Claire sat in the living room with Sandra going over documents. What to expect in the next few weeks? Court dates, custody arrangements, The mechanics of dismantling a marriage that had been held together by fear. Around 5, Big Dave called again. Dennis is at a bar, fourth one today. He's drinking heavy and he's getting loud. Bartender's starting to look worried. Jim ever show up? No, Dennis called him 3 times. Jim didn't answer. Last time Dennis left a voicemail. Couldn't hear what he said, but he threw his phone after. Keep eyes on him. Will do. Dinner was quiet. Lily ate everything on her plate without being asked. Claire picked at hers, pushing food around more than eating it. Sandra had gone back to her office to file additional paperwork, but said she'd be available by phone all night. Ray was helping Marcus clean up when his phone rang again. Hector this time. He's on the move. Left the bar about 10 minutes ago. He's drunk, Ray. I mean really drunk. Almost didn't make it to his truck without falling. Where's he headed? East, toward Beaumont. Ray's hand tightened on the phone. Lone. Yeah, but he's got something in the passenger seat. Can't tell what from here, but it's long. Could be what? Could be a crowbar or a bat, something like that. Ray closed his eyes. ETA. At the speed he's driving, maybe 40 minutes. Maybe less if he doesn't wrap himself around a tree first. Call it in. DUI in progress. Give them his plates. Already did. Beaumont PD says they'll intercept. Tell them he's in violation of a protective order served this morning. Tell them he's potentially armed. Tell them the protected party is at this address and he knows it. On it. Ray hung up and walked into the living room where Claire was sitting with Lily. He's coming, he said. He's drunk and he might be armed and he's about 40 minutes out. Police are trying to intercept, but I need you both to go into the back bedroom with Marcus. Lock the door. Don't come out until I say. Claire stood up. Her face had gone white, but her voice was steady. Lily, come on. Is Ray going to be okay? Lily asked. I'm fine, Ray said, but I need you to do what I'm asking. Can you do that? Lily looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. She walked to the back of the house with her mother. Marcus followed. Ray heard the door close, heard the lock turn. He called Big Dave. How far back are you? About half a mile. I can see his taillights. Beaumont PD say they were intercepting. They did, but there's a problem. What problem? He just turned off the main road. He's taking back roads. Unless they know exactly where he is, they're not going to find him in time. Ray walked to the front window, looked out at the empty street, the evening settling into dark. How long? 20 minutes, maybe less. Ray thought about the layout of the house, the sight lines, the approaches. He thought about Marcus in the back room with Claire and Lily, and whether the lock on that door would hold against a man with a crowbar and 4 years of rage. It wouldn't. Get here, Ray said, fast as you can. He hung up and called Sandra. Dennis is en route, possibly armed. Beaumont PD is trying to intercept, but he's on back roads. He'll be here in under 20 minutes. I'm calling them now. I'll make sure they know. Sandra, if he gets here before they do, you do what you need to do to keep them safe. I'll handle the legal fallout. She hung up. Ray stood in the living room and waited. The minutes passed like hours. He could hear Marcus in the back room talking to Lily in a low voice. Couldn't hear the words, but could hear the tone. Calm, steady, keeping a child calm in a situation that had no business involving a child at all. His phone buzzed. Hector, he just pulled onto your street. Ray looked out the window, saw the headlights, one out, the blue Ford truck moving too fast, swerving slightly, overcorrecting. It stopped in front of the house. Dennis got out. He had a crowbar. Ray stepped out onto the porch. Dennis saw him and stopped, swayed slightly. The streetlight caught his face and Ray could see the specific desperation there. The look of a man who has lost everything and has decided that if he can't have it, nobody can. Get out of my way, Dennis said. His words were slurred, but his intent was clear. Can't do that, Ray said. That's my family in there. Not anymore. Dennis took a step forward, the crowbar loose in his right hand. I'll go through you if I have to. You can try. Behind Dennis, another vehicle pulled up. Not a police car, a sedan. The door opened and a man got out. Mid-40s, wearing work clothes, paint-stained. He looked at Dennis, looked at Ray, looked at the crowbar. "Dennis," the man said, "what are you doing?" Dennis turned. "Travis, this doesn't concern you." "Yeah, it does. You called me an hour ago, said you needed help, said you needed someone to back you up because your family was being stolen." Travis looked at the house, at Ray on the porch, at the crowbar in Dennis's hand. "This isn't backing you up, man. This is watching you commit a felony. I just need to talk to her. With a crowbar. I just need—" "No." Travis shook his head. "No, Dennis. I came because we worked together, because I thought maybe you were in a bad spot and needed a hand. But this—" he gestured at the house, at Ray, at everything. "This is you about to hurt people, and I'm not—" He stopped himself. "There's a kid in there, Dennis. I saw her picture on your phone. She's what, 8, 9 palm?" Dennis said nothing. "I'm not helping you do this." Travis got back in his car, started the engine. Before he pulled away, he rolled down the window. "Get help, Dennis. Real help. Before you do something you can't take back." He drove off. Dennis stood in the street, swaying, the crowbar still in his hand. Ray could see him processing it, the abandonment, the isolation, the specific and terrible awareness that he was alone. "It's over, Dennis," Ray said. "The protective order is filed. Claire and Lily are safe. Jim can't help you. Your friend just walked away. And there are police on their way here right now." "I can't," Dennis's voice broke. "I can't lose them. They're all I have." "You lost them when you raised your hand the first time. Everything after that was just you refusing to see it." Dennis looked at the crowbar, looked at the house, looked at Ray. For a moment, Ray thought he was going to charge, thought he was going to try to go through Ray and into the house and make this the violent thing it had been threatening to be me all day. But then Dennis's shoulder sagged. The crowbar dropped from his hand and hit the pavement with a dull clang, and he started to cry. Not the manipulative crying of a man trying to generate sympathy, the ugly, broken crying of someone whose entire architecture of control has collapsed and who has nothing left to hold himself up with. He sank down to the curb, put his face in his hands. Ray stayed on the porch, sirens in the distance, getting closer. 2 Beaumont PD cruisers pulled up. 4 officers got out, hands on their weapons, assessing the scene. Ray raised his hand slightly. "I'm Ray Mitchell. I'm the one who called it in. Sandra Reyes is representing the protected party. That's Dennis Pruitt. He's in violation of a protective order filed this morning. The crowbar is on the ground next to him." One of the officers approached Dennis. "Mr. Pruitt, I need you to stand up and put your hands behind your back." Dennis didn't move. "Mr. Pruitt." Slowly, Dennis stood, put his hands behind his back. The officer cuffed him. "You're under arrest for violation of a protective order. You have the right to remain silent." The Miranda rights continued, but Dennis wasn't listening. He was looking at the house, at the front door, like he could see through it to where Claire and Lily were. "Tell her I'm sorry," he said. "Sir, you need to stop talking." "Tell her I never meant—" "Sir." They put him in the back of the cruiser, drove him away. The remaining officers took statements, photographed the crowbar, photographed the tire marks from where Dennis had swerved. One of them went to the door and knocked. Ray opened it. "Is Claire Brennan here?" "She is." "We need to verify she's safe." Ray called back to the bedroom. "Claire, police need to see you're okay." The door opened. Claire came out, Lily right behind her. The officer looked at Claire, at the fading bruise on her face, at Lily's bruise, older now but still visible. "Ma'am, are you all right?" "Yes." "Did he make contact with you or your daughter?" "No, Ray kept him outside." The officer looked at Ray. "You did good. Backup was still 5 minutes out. If he'd gotten inside—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. They left around 9. The street went quiet. Marcus made tea. Lily fell asleep on the couch before she finished hers. Ray carried her to the bedroom. Claire pulled the blanket up over her. They stood there for a moment looking at this child who had done everything right and still had to live through a night where a man came to her door with a crowbar. "She's safe," Ray said, "because of you." Because she walked across a parking lot and asked for help. Everything else followed from that. They went back to the living room. Marcus had already gone to bed. Claire sat on the couch where Lily had been. "What happens now?" she asked. "Dennis gets arraigned tomorrow. Sandra will be there. He'll be charged with violation of the protective order, probably criminal trespassing, possibly assault with a deadly weapon depending on how the DA wants to frame the crowbar. He's looking at jail time." "How much?" Sandra said 6 months minimum. Could be more depending on his record and how the judge feels about men who show up at their ex-wife's door drunk with a crowbar. Claire absorbed this. "And after after you and Lily start building something new, Sandra helps you with the divorce, the custody arrangement, finding a place of your own. You start over. Just like that. Not just like that. It'll be hard, but you won't be doing it alone." Claire looked at him. "You're leaving soon." "Tomorrow. Sandra's got things under control. Beaumont PD knows the situation. You've got Marcus and the people here. I'm not needed anymore." "That's not true. The part I could do is done." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Lily's going to want to say goodbye." "I know. She's going to try not to cry." "I know that too. She's gotten very good at not crying." Ray looked at the hallway where Lily was sleeping. "Yeah, she has." 3 days later, Dennis Pruitt stood in front of Judge Kellerman and pleaded no contest to violation of a protective order in criminal trespassing. The judge looked at the file, at the photographs of Claire's face, at the photographs of Lily's face, at the crowbar that had been entered into evidence. "Mr. Pruitt, I've been doing this for 23 years. I have seen a lot of men stand where you're standing and tell me they're sorry, that they didn't mean it, that it won't happen again." She paused. "You kept journals. You documented what you did to your wife like you were conducting research. You coached with a law enforcement officer on how to make her reports disappear. You showed up at her place of refuge with a weapon after being served with a protective order." Another pause. "I don't believe you're sorry. I believe you're sorry you got caught. 4 years, eligible for parole in 2. Dennis was taken into custody. Sandra called Claire with the news. Claire sat on the bed in the small apartment she'd moved into the week before and tried to understand that it was over. 4 years. She'd been married to him for 4 years. He'd get the same amount in prison. The symmetry felt important, though she couldn't say exactly why. Lily was at school, her first week at the new school. She'd been nervous the first day, but had come home talking about a girl named Sophie who liked the same books she did, and a teacher named Mrs. Hendricks who let them have a plant on each desk that they were responsible for. Lily had chosen a small cactus. "Because it doesn't need much," she'd said. "Just sun and a little water, and it'll be okay." Claire had understood that Lily wasn't just talking about the plant. That night, they had dinner at the kitchen table in their apartment. It was small, cramped, the furniture was secondhand, and the walls needed paint. But it was theirs. After dinner, Lily went to her room to do homework. Claire sat at the table with a cup of tea and looked at the phone number Sandra had given her. Angela Reeves. She'd been meaning to call for a week, had picked up the phone half a dozen times and put it back down. "What do you say to someone who survived the same man you did? What do you say to someone who tried to warn people and wasn't believed?" She dialed before she could talk herself out of it. It rang 3 times. "Hello, Angela. This is Claire Brennan." Silence on the other end. Then, "I've been hoping you'd call." They talked for 2 hours. Not about Dennis, not at first. About other things. Where they'd grown up. What they'd wanted to be when they were kids. The specific smallness of their lives before him, and the specific enormity of their lives after. Eventually, Angela said, "Do you ever feel like nobody understands unless they've been through it?" "Every day." Sandra told me about a support group for women who have been through this. I've been thinking about going, but I haven't yet. I haven't either. We could go together if you wanted. Claire looked at Lily's closed bedroom door, at the small apartment, at the life they were building one careful piece at a time. I'd like that, she said. 2 months later, Ray's phone rang while he was somewhere in Nevada, middle of nowhere. Just him and the road and the kind of silence that's so complete you can hear the wind change direction. He pulled over, looked at the number, didn't recognize it, but something made him answer anyway. This is Ray. Ray, it's Lily. He'd know that voice anywhere. The careful precision, the measured way of speaking like every word was chosen specifically. Hey kid, everything okay? Everything's good. Mom said I could call you. I wanted to tell you something. I'm listening. I got an award at school for courage. They gave it to me in front of the whole assembly, and I had to go up on stage, and the principal asked me where I learned to be brave. She paused. I told them about you. Ray pulled the bike fully off the road, killed the engine. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. I told them about a man who said yes when everyone else would have said no. I told them about how sometimes the bravest thing you can do is ask for help, and sometimes the bravest thing you can do is give it. Ray looked out at the desert, at the long, empty stretch of highway, at the particular kind of freedom that comes from having nowhere you need to be. You did the hard part, Lily. You walked across that parking lot. I know, but you could have said no. You could have taken the dollar and then left anyway. People do that. They say they'll help and then they don't. I'm not people. I know. That's why I told them about you. She was quiet for a moment. Mom says we're doing good. We have our own place now. It's small, but it's ours. I have my own room. I put the dollar you gave back on my wall, in a frame. The whole dollar. Yeah, Mom said it was the best investment we ever made. Ray smiled at that. How's your mom doing? She's good. She got a job at a bookstore. She really likes it. And she's going to meetings with this woman named Angela, who used to be married to Dennis too. They help each other. That's good. She smiles more now, like really smiles, not the kind where she's pretending. I'm glad. Another pause. Ray, there's something else I wanted to ask you. Yeah. Do you remember what you said to me that first night in the backyard at Marcus's house? He thought about standing in the dark with this 8-year-old who'd done everything right and was still scared it wouldn't be enough. I said a lot of things that night. You said that what I did walking out to meet you, that it was the whole definition of brave, because I thought about it and did it anyway, even though I was scared. I remember. I think about that a lot. When things are hard, when I'm scared about something new, I think about 15 minutes behind the diner and how I almost didn't come out. But you did. But I did, she repeated. And everything changed. She took a breath. I just wanted to say thank you for that, for all of it. You're welcome. Will I see you again? Ray thought about the road ahead, about the way he lived, about the specific restlessness that had defined most of his adult life. Yeah, he said. Yeah, kid, you'll see me again. Promise, promise. After they hung up, Ray sat there for a while, looking at the phone, at the empty road, at the sky going purple with sunset. He thought about a little girl with $15 and a bruised face who'd made a decision that changed everything. He thought about the specific mathematics of courage, how it wasn't the absence of fear, but the presence of something stronger than fear. He thought about Carol with her phone full of dated photographs, and Sandra with her legal pad, and Angela with her emails, and Thomas with his contacts, and all the people who'd been waiting for someone to ask for help in a way they could answer. He started the bike, let the engine rumble to life beneath him, pulled back onto the highway heading west, because there was always more road, always another town, always another person who might need someone to say yes when everyone else said no. He'd done the math a long time ago. The world was full of people who looked away. It only took one person who didn't to change everything. Sometimes that person came into your life on a motorcycle. Sometimes that person was 8 years old with $15 and the kind of courage that made grown men question what they thought they knew about bravery. Either way, the work was the same. Show up, say yes, don't leave until the job is done. Simple as that. Complicated as that. He rode west into the sunset, thinking about $1 in a frame on a wall in a small apartment in Beaumont, Texas, and the particular quiet satisfaction of knowing that $15 had bought something that would last a lot longer than either of them. It had bought a chance, and sometimes a chance is all anyone needs. The road stretched ahead of him, empty and wide and full of possibility, and Ray Mitchell did what he'd always done. He kept moving forward. Because forward was the only direction that mattered. Forward was where the work was. Forward was where the next person would be, standing behind a diner or on a street corner or in a parking lot somewhere, looking for someone who'd say yes when everyone else said no. And when that person appeared, and they would appear, they always did, Ray Mitchell would do what he always did. He'd stop, he'd listen, he'd say yes, and the world would change $15 at a time.